This boy lost over 1,000 sword duels over the years. Sometime later, he was at the Royal Academy defeating the best knight in his class with a single attack. As if that wasn't enough, he was so confident that he faced the best in the academy. During the duel, his rival used every technique he knew trying to take the boy down. But in the end, the talentless, low-born nobody crushed the academy's greatest prospect. Everyone was in shock, unable to believe that the loser kid had beaten noble warriors so easily. What they didn't know is that his life had taken a huge turn. After losing every single fight, Leon, the protagonist, started to wonder if this was really what he wanted for his life, because no matter how hard he trained, he always lost to the same guy, the other Leon. This other Leon was everything our hero was not. Blonde, charismatic, and with a sword it looked like he didn't even have to try. Late at night, while our protagonist trained alone, blonde Leon was partying with his family. Our MC just stood there, alone, asking the gods why he was such a failure. That's when the gods heard his prayers and dropped a divine package at his feet. A crater opened up with a sword pulsing with energy that almost looked alive. The craziest part was that it could talk. The sword said it would give all of its power so he could have the chance to prove his worth. After getting beat up so much by the blonde guy and years of grinding hard, his time to shine had finally come. The prophecy said the owner of the sword would be a guy named Leon. There were 2 guys with that name at the academy. Elsid the sword figured out who was who and made her choice. Our Leon, a commoner, no aura, no rich family, nothing but pure determination, was the right guy. So the protagonist climbed down into the crater, and even with the insane pressure coming from the sword's power, he walked straight to it and pulled it from the ground. From that moment on, he became the master of the sacred sword. The next day, he wakes up thinking it was all a dream, but there she was, the weapon that was about to change his life. A voice came from inside it, already telling him not to get cocky just because he has a magic sword. If he wanted to get strong, he would have to bleed for it. The sword then sinks into Leon's hand, leaving only a tattoo on his skin. That way only he can see and hear the weapon. So nobody would find it weird that a commoner student was walking around school with a glowing sacred sword on his back. The protagonist started testing his skills with the sword, and already felt a difference. Everything felt much lighter. Then the little ghost started pushing him to train the right way, because that was the only way he'd grow. He spent the whole night training his agility. On the day of class, he could barely keep his eyes open from exhaustion. But Elsid was strict and jumped straight into teaching the basics. She explained that vision is one of the most important things for a warrior. The little ghost was about to teach him a very useful vision trick. Leon just stands there, clueless, thinking it was just about rolling his eyes in some weird way, even makes a bunch of faces trying to figure it out, and Elsid cuts him off and tells him to focus. The training starts right there in the classroom, and it works like this. Elsid tells Leon to focus on the teacher at the front. The protagonist has 10 seconds to memorize everything around him. When time was up, Leon had to close his eyes. Elsid starts firing questions like, how many lines were on the board? Did the guy who walked by in the back wear glasses? Was the light in the 12th room on? Leon was completely lost because he only focused on the teacher and ignored everything else. Elsid explains that people waste their vision without realizing it because the brain filters what seems important and erases the rest. The training is about opening up your full vision and capturing every detail in your mind like a photo. Meanwhile, the other students were just watching the kid make a bunch of faces at nothing, absolutely convinced he was out of his mind. By late afternoon at the academy, Leon looks less like a chosen hero and more like a zombie. His eyes and head feel like they're splitting apart. While Elsid says things are going well, she explains that the eye strain is probably from dryness or from tensing too much, but the headache is something else. She says the pain is coming from waking up an attribute that had been shut down this whole time. To Elsid, it's basically like sore muscles. Leon asks if that's what she means, and she says, yeah, pretty much. It's not exactly the same since the brain doesn't feel pain like muscles do, but that's the easiest way to think about it. Then she tells him training isn't over yet. The protagonist suddenly gets fired up and says he gets it. Elsid tells him to look at the chandelier and asks how many candles are on it. He guesses 2. She snaps back that it's 3, then calls him an idiot. Right after that, she asks whether the guy who walked past a few seconds ago had glasses. MC says yes, and she follows up by asking if he was wearing a tie. A little later, she asks if the light in the 12th room on the left was on. Leon says it was. Then she asks about the room above it, and he stammers out both yes and no. They keep moving through the academy like that until they reach a shelter. By the time he gets back to his room, he finally lets out a scream. He covers his eyes with both hands and writhes in pain. Elsid says his first day was decent, and he deserves credit for never asking to stop or take a break. Leon asks if she would have let him rest anyway. She flatly says no. He wonders how long it's been since he pushed himself this hard. It's also been a long time since his mind felt this drained. Elsid tells him getting too comfortable can mean he stopped growing. If he only repeats the same training, he'll hit a wall. She adds that repetition has benefits, but once the body finds an easy way to handle it, that becomes a problem. The protagonist asks what she means by an easy way. Her answer is simple: The body gets used to one method, so changing that method is absolutely necessary. Leon asks if that's why she had him do those running drills, and Elsid says yes. She needed him to notice the things he isn't used to doing, and that makes him stop and think. Elsid explains that the way people train and live shapes their bones, muscles, and nerves in different ways. Navigators build great balance, hunters sharpen their sense of direction, and nomads gain amazing eyesight. MC figures he gets it now. This training is meant to build on his strengths and cover his weak points, and that's why Elsid started here. She says his strengths are the stamina he built through constant practice, his mindset, and the solid basics he got from repeating sword forms. His weakness, though, is stiffness from too much repetition and not enough mental or physical flexibility. Leon then asks about aura and swordsmanship. That seems to annoy Elsid a little. She says swordsmanship in the end is just how you use a sword. If he can take the basics and adjust them to the situation, that already counts as swordsmanship. She does admit there are incredibly powerful sword styles out there, but then, irritated, she bumps her forehead against Leon's and asks who would teach something like that to someone who's only promised loyalty. Using his head for once, he admits she's right while Elsid keeps watching him. She goes on to say there isn't much to tell him about aura yet. The person who beat him before used aura, but if someone like the protagonist suddenly learned it, people would get suspicious, so she'll teach aura after he leaves the academy. For now, he needs to master seeing. And doesn't he want to beat that guy as soon as possible? Fully fired up, MC says yes, he's seriously pumped. Elsid says that still isn't enough, and he asks what she means. She reminds him that even focused training turns stale if repeated too much, like when that nervous teacher noticed someone staring at him non-stop. Sooner or later, he'll get bored with doing the same thing. Leon gets a really bad feeling hearing that. A little nervous, he asks Elsid what she plans to do next. She says it's nothing big, just a punishment every time he gets an answer wrong. The idea is to keep him from ever getting comfortable with the training, and they'll start tomorrow. Leon is instantly filled with dread at the word punishment. Elsid tells him she's not picking on him for fun. It's just an effective method called operant conditioning. His willpower and mindset help, she says, but he still needs something to push him harder. He hesitates, but deep down he knows she's right. If punishment is coming either way, he may as well accept it now and get started. That way, he'll build resistance to it too. Elsid asks if he's really sure, and the protagonist gives a thumbs up and tells her to bring it on. The very next second, he screams at the top of his lungs. Elsid asks if that really lasted only 5 seconds, as Leon collapses onto the bed and passes out. She explains that since it was the first time, she couldn't measure it right. Next time, she'll hold back more. Smiling, she adds that the punishment will get stronger if he keeps making mistakes. So all he has to do is answer correctly. Excited for tomorrow, Elsid says they'll give it everything, while MC lies there completely fried, thinking this sword is straight up demonic. The next morning begins at the academy, and Leon is already back at it, training hard again with Elsid perched on his shoulder. During class, the teacher is clearly unsettled by one student's strange stare. Back in his room, he keeps training until his body hits its limit. Outside, Elsid asks how many pigeons are on the dorm roof. The protagonist answers 10. Then she asks which one would fly away first, and he says the 6th. Next she asks how many pigeons are on the open window, and the protagonist says there aren't any, it's a crow. Elsid says that's actually pretty good for only a month, since spotting the crow was hard. Still, she says he nearly failed. Getting hopeful, Leon asks, so? Elsid cuts him off and says they'll stop for today and rest. Overjoyed, MC thinks he's finally getting a break after a whole month. Then the blonde he suddenly shows up and calls out to him, catching him totally off guard. For a few seconds, neither of them says anything. Then the blonde boy turns to him with a sharp look and says, "It's been a while, Leon." The protagonist thinks about how he hasn't seen him since training with Elsid started. Even so, it's probably been about half a month since they last talked. The blonde boy says he's been seeing MC train after lunch, which sounds just like him. He came because he was a little worried, but now he feels relieved. He asks what he was worried about. The answer is that a month has passed since the challenge, and he thought the protagonist had given up like everyone else. But then he adds that, judging by Leon's face, he looks more eager than ever. MC asks if it's really that obvious. Smiling, the blonde boy says yes. He says the expressions of people who think they can beat him all look different from his. That answer makes Leon smile. He says, "Good for you. So that's why you came to find me at lunch? Then why are you still here if you're done?" The blonde boy laughs it off, says the protagonist's being cold, and asks why not talk a little longer since it's been a while. MC pushes back, asking what they'd even talk about. The blonde boy just smiles and says 10 minutes is enough. He scratches his head, unsure what to say. In the end, he gives in and sits down next to him. They stay quiet for a moment until the blonde Leon finally speaks up and asks if he's heard the rumor that he isn't really a commoner. The protagonist finds that funny and repeats, "Rumor?" He asks if there was ever any point in bringing that up. It never looked like the guy was trying to hide it, and now MC wonders if he should start speaking more formally. The blonde boy says that's not why he started this talk. He should think of him as a guy who hides his identity, not as an upperclassman. That catches Leon off guard a little. Still, he relaxes and agrees. Then the other boy asks if he knows why he accepted all those duels. Thinking back, the protagonist says yes. If he had refused, it wouldn't have hurt him. He could have avoided every duel without exposing who he was. So they only kept happening because he allowed it. That thought annoys MC. To him, it sounds like nothing but the kindness of the one who kept winning, and compared to that, all he can do is keep committing to this. Then the blonde boy suddenly says they should end it already. Leon is caught off guard and gets a little tense. He asks if he really means end it, and the blonde boy says there's no reason to drag this on anymore. The next duel will be the last, pure swordsmanship only, no aura, and real swords instead of wooden ones. He is shaken by that proposal and slowly tries to take it in. With a challenging look, the blonde adds that if Leon loses, he'll become his subordinate. The protagonist's mind races. Is this some kind of way to settle who stands above who? He says it sounds like a wager. Then he asks what guarantee that promise has. It's not a magic contract, just words, and words can be broken. The blonde agrees that would be true with someone else, but MC is too stubborn and prideful for that. He says he trusts MC's word. He adds that he is exactly the kind of person who keeps a promise no matter why he made it. Leon confirms the condition. If he loses, he becomes the other boy's subordinate. The blonde confirms it, and the protagonist is about to ask something else right after. Now excited again, he asks what happens if he wins. Just thinking about that seems to light a fire in him. The blonde MC doesn't hesitate at all. He says Leon can ask for anything, as long as it doesn't stain his honor or harm his family, an aura technique, secret swordsmanship, whatever it is. Smiling, he agrees and says he'll choose what he wants on the day of the duel. As he leaves, the blonde boy tells the protagonist to say when he's ready. The place needs to be set up, so he wants at least 3 days' notice. They part ways, both fully set on what comes next. To MC, it feels like the moment has finally come. This will be the real clash between him, chosen by the sacred sword, and him, the prince aiming for the throne. Still, our Leon can't shake his nerves. Noticing that, the sword asks what's wrong. She wonders if he's scared after making it this far, especially since he seemed fine just before. The protagonist says that's not it. What he really wants to know is whether he's actually gotten stronger. Elsid looks confused by the question. Staring at the marks on his hand, Leon says the last month of training was brutal, but even so, he doesn't feel any stronger. The sword stays quiet for a moment, thinking. Then she tells him he's grown much stronger, even if he can't tell yet, so he doesn't need to worry. Elsid explains that vision is a different kind of power, so MC can't feel it properly since he still hasn't mastered it. But she says she prepared more than just that. Before explaining, she asks if he has a physical test later. When he says yes, she tells him to wait and stretches her arm back, saying something unbelievable is about to happen. She grins, sure he won't be able to take back what he said. Leon gets uneasy, not knowing what she means. Soon, an instructor orders the boys to line up by number and tells anyone feeling sick to step aside. As the others start warming up, he gets tense, remembering he was called 9th last time. Physical skill was judged without mana, and nobles still filled the top spots, so 9th had been his ceiling. Elsid asks where the protagonist ranked, and he says first. She says that fits. The blonde has trained hard, though still not as hard as the protagonist, and he's far above the pampered nobles. The test is a short distance race, 2 laps around the field, about 800 meters. The other MC finished it in 1 minute 20 seconds, while MC took 1 minute 40. That 20-second gap made the blonde untouchable, but Elsid confidently tells him not to be afraid. This time, he has her on his side. After hearing that, the protagonist says he'll trust Elsid. The boys get ready at the starting line. The evaluator signals the start, and everyone takes off, trying to finish as fast as possible. One runner goes all out from the start, shocking the others. Even blonde Leon is left stunned. It's MC. He blasts past everyone. He keeps pushing and holds first the whole way, running like a rocket. A girl with a stopwatch calls out, announcing Leon's time. 1 minute 29 seconds. He lights up while his rival starts looking uneasy. The evaluator walks over and asks if he has learned aura. The protagonist says no, so the man checks if he really didn't use it. He grabs MC's arm and sends mana through him. He realizes he's checking for aura since it would be broken apart during the test if he had used it. The man can hardly believe it. The protagonist really hasn't learned aura, yet changed this much in only a few weeks. He asked what kind of training the protagonist did. Leon shyly says he only worked on the basics and actually had more rest than before. The man studies his records, noticing MC's old training load was insanely high. He wonders if all that rest finally let his body improve after years of work. then brushes the thought off as absurd, while the others watch with envy. Blonde, the protagonist, also looks uneasy. Quietly, Leon asks Elsid what happened. She casually says this is exactly what she predicted, and MC presses her for a real answer. Instead, she asks where strength comes from in the body. While the instructor fusses around with his papers, he answers, the muscles. Elsid says that in this world, most training only focuses on building muscle, but that's only half of it. Muscles are linked to neurons, and how much power they can use depends on how developed those nerves are. So strength isn't just about muscle size. Leon struggles to follow along. He's never heard this before. Elsid explains that muscle density is mostly set by nature, and muscles can only grow so much. The protagonist had already hit that limit through brutal training, so instead, she focused on developing his nervous system. MC says he sort of gets it. Still confused, he asks how she even did that. He doesn't remember training like that, so he guesses something happened while he slept. Elsid reveals it was part of his punishment, leaving him stunned. For a moment, Leon slips back into that private space where only he can see and speak with the sword, going silent as everyone else wonders what's wrong. Elsid explains that something sleeping inside him had been awakened. That's why his muscles hurt so much, and why every failed vision session came with pain. It was all part of developing his nerves. He asks why Elsid never told him sooner, and she answers that it would have only made him more miserable. He makes a hard-to-read face. As Elsid says mastering vision was the only way to escape the pain, the protagonist remembers a moment with his teacher. Then he recalls another with a fellow student, realizing that once he knew the reason for the punishment, he understood he had to endure it. Elsid believes he never would have pushed himself that hard without going through all of it. Then she basically hints that he should thank her. She insists she only did what needed to be done, and now things are working out perfectly. Leon starts wondering if she's less a sacred sword and more a demonic one. If this sword really carries the soul and mind of the great hero Rodrigo, then was Rodrigo actually a villain instead of a hero? As he comes back to himself, he hears the students cheering about something else. Just as expected, Blonde MC has broken his own record. The blonde throws Leon a proud look, and he glares right back. He has every reason to be annoyed. He got second, but still couldn't beat his biggest rival. It would have been crazy to pass him in only 1 month, and the protagonist knows he shouldn't be satisfied yet, but it still bothers him. Even so, going from somewhere between 1st and 9th all the way to 2nd is huge. Fired up, MC starts to believe he can win. No, that he will. That night in the dorms, as he gets ready to sleep, Leon asks what training comes next. Elsid says vision training wasn't just about memory practice. She adds that there's nothing left to improve with his body. Now he needs experience using what he learned. He says that will be hard without real fights, so Elsid suggests leaving the academy. The protagonist eagerly asks if she can teach him swordsmanship, but Elsid shuts that down right away, calling it a fantasy. She says he has to learn aura first. Once he does, the basics of swordsmanship will be more than enough for a while. Without aura, martial arts are just cheap tricks. Even so-called secret moves only work the first time. Once people read his pattern, he'll be easy to beat. Elsid asks if he really thinks the other Leon would fall for something that weak. Frustrated, MC asks what he's supposed to do, and Elsid tells him to use his feelings. Thinking about his record and his own improved time, Elsid says a sword sharpened by long effort is strong. Leon has now reached a similar level physically, and his rival won't be able to beat him so easily anymore. After a pause, though, she adds one important thing. He still needs real battle experience. She asks if there's anyone at the academy likely to fight him, but the protagonist quickly says no. The next day, MC is still thinking about that talk with Elsid. Then someone suddenly asks if he's the commoner named him. A group of boys is staring down at him from the stairs. Looking closer, Leon spots a badge on one of their uniforms and realizes they're from the noble class. They angrily demand to know how a commoner took second place. To them, the protagonist clearly used some trick that even fooled the instructor, but they won't be fooled. MC thinks it's amazing how guys like this exist everywhere, then asks what their problem is with the rankings. He tells them to complain to the instructor if they don't like the results, and the trio stares in disbelief that someone like him would talk back. They snap that they have no way of knowing what trick he used, especially since he never swore loyalty, and it was suspicious enough that he was even ranked 9th before. Now they think his true colors are finally showing, and they demand to know which family is backing him. Leon realizes they aren't listening, and figures they never came to talk at all. To them, he's just a weed they want to pull out. Then someone else appears behind them on the stairs. The newcomer tells them to stop, tell them to calm down. Even if Leon is a commoner, they're all students at the same academy. The crowd that had gathered to watch starts admiring him for saying that. Then Lord Elman says the punishment nobles give is called dignity. After saying that, he asks the others what they think, and they agree. This is exactly what you'd expect from the pride of the Bourbon family. Elsid asks if he's the leader and whether he's from a powerful house. He says he's the second son of the Bourbon family. He He was always the one in second place on the physical test. So he's probably mad Leon took that spot. Nobles picking on the weak, and the weak striking back at nobles. It always goes the same way. Elman says it's a shame his first meeting with the protagonist has to happen like this. He adds that MC may feel treated unfairly, but nobles can't just let something like this pass. Then he holds out his hand and asks him to accept their proposal. Leon says he'll decide after he hears what the proposal is. That answer makes the other nobles flare up, but Lord Elman quiets them with one motion. Elman proposes a few matches, supervised by an instructor. The protagonist stares back, realizing this is where things were headed. The two exchange calm smiles. It sounds generous to bring in an instructor, but MC knows the offer puts him at a big disadvantage. Elman never said aura was off limits, which means he'll use it to his advantage. Leon also knows that if he objects, they'll claim he tricked the instructor, and if he refuses, they'll just spread rumors another way. He turns and looks toward the crowd, where his eyes meet Blonde, the protagonists. He knows that Leon could probably get him out of this mess. For a moment, he grits his teeth. Then he realizes asking his rival for help would just be begging. To him, that would feel even worse than the insult he's dealing with now. So MC accepts the duel. Elman lifts a brow, a little surprised he agreed to the proposal. He counters with his own terms. Helmet will oversee the matches. They go one person per day, and if he wins, they never question his skill again. Then he asks if Elman can accept that. Leon picked Helmet because that demonic instructor can spot any trick, and right then, as if on cue, the man suddenly feels his ear get warm. In the end, Elman agrees to the terms. The protagonist doesn't care much who watches the fight, but he does think it's a shame he can't beat them up as long as he wants. Back in his room, Leon says Baster had quite the look on his face, and he never thought he'd get real battle experience like this. Elseed says that, at least in terms of results, it's perfect. A little unsure, MC asks if she thinks he can win without using aura. He admits he doesn't know, since he's never fought anyone who actually uses it. Elseed suddenly perks up and asks if he wants her to show him an easier way. Not really getting it, he just asks, "What?" Excited, Elseed snaps her fingers and says this should be the simplest method, and a screen appears in front of Leon with his name. Level 18, some skills, and a class label saying he's a hero who still can't use aura. Surprised, the protagonist asks what he's looking at, and she replies, "What else? It's your current abilities." Then she switches the screen and says, "These are Elmont's stats." She warns that she based them on her own judgment, so they aren't perfectly exact. Leon is shocked and asks if Elmont is really that weak. He points out that as a Count's second son, Elmont has probably taken every elixir possible and had all kinds of training. But Elseed says if someone can't properly absorb those elixirs, they'll still end up average, and Elmont's training probably doesn't come close to MC's. She explains that most people without aura would be like rank E, stuck at 99 points. Still, she says he can break past that wall because of his brutal training and fast growth. With her help and his own effort, even without aura, he can still take on those idiots. That leaves Leon a little stunned. He asks if that means he won't lose in raw physical ability, and if so, then he's fine. Just like Elseed said, the sword goes quiet, waiting for him to think it through. The protagonist decides that from now on he'll aim for the top, not settle for less. There's no way he'll lose to someone like Elmont. Then he asks why the screen calls him a hero who still can't use aura, and Elseed says if he hates it, he should get stronger. Later, near one of the academy gates, Leon heads down the hall when someone suddenly calls out to him. He turns and sees the instructor watching him. The man says MC has changed a lot in just 1 month, and adds that if Leon were being reckless, he would have stopped him, but it looks like that won't be needed. Then he asks the boy if he isn't, and he says he has no idea what he means. Smiling, the instructor says the protagonist is pretending not to get it, and tells him to do his best, though he is still confused. Then Helmet, clearly excited, tells him to teach those idiots a lesson and asks if he understands now. This time, MC gets the message. When he enters the hall, it's already packed. Leon steps inside with a firm look. Right away, someone calls out to him. With an angry face, the boy demands how a mere commoner dares make him wait and acts like rules don't apply to him. He ignores him, turns to the instructor and says they're starting. Helmet says that's fine. The instructor declares that both fighters are staking their names and honor on this match, with him as witness. Then he asks Jeff Heinrich what he wants from it. Furious, Jeff says he wants the commoner to confess his crimes, while Leon watches him in silence. Helmet then asks the protagonist what he wants, and he says he wants this duel to be the last time this guy ever bothers him. Helmet claps and says all right. He orders them both to step forward twice and take their positions. Lionel and Leon watch, thinking he's at a disadvantage since he can't use aura, and even a wooden sword can cut if aura is poured into it. Elsie asks if MC wants to check the boy's stats, but he says no. No matter how strong that guy is, he's still just Elmont's lackey, and MC doesn't need Elsid's help for someone like that. Then without warning, the boy rushes into the arena. Shouting, he charges straight at him with his wooden sword. Leon reads the attack at once. It looks like a diagonal slash from upper right to lower left, but it's so obvious that he wonders if it's a fake. So he waits and watches the blade come down toward his head, wondering why this guy is so slow. In one smooth move, Leon slips past the strike and cracks him on the head. The instructor is stunned, and the boy's friends go pale. Even Lionel and Blonde, the protagonist, are shocked. Heinrich freezes with a mark on his forehead, drooling and shaking a little. MC looks back, confused about what is wrong with him, and then, to his shock, the guy topples over like a cut tree trunk. Leon can barely believe it ended that quickly. Groaning on the floor, the boy manages to spit out, "You." Then, struggling back up, he says he shouldn't think he won from one lucky hit. It was just a mistake. Annoyed, he demands another round right away. Helmet shuts that down, saying Jeff Heinrich lost and he won't allow ugly behavior. Leon smiles and says, "All right then." That answer catches both Heinrich and Helmet off guard. Laughing loudly, Heinrich says that for a commoner, the protagonist sure knows his place. MC says fine, this time he won't hold back. Elsid speaks up and tells him not to end it in one blow again. As they face off, the instructor starts the match, and Elsid reminds him this is his first time using vision in a real fight. Since she basically volunteered as his training partner, she says he should know that one-hit finish was the protagonist showing mercy. The protagonist answers, "Got it." The boy charges again with another huge, careless swing. Leon blocks it easily. He focuses and uses what he learned about vision, seeing the movement of the boy's arms, legs, even his eyes. Enough to read his next move. Elsid says once he catches the first motion, he can predict the rest. Heinrich keeps attacking, and Leon keeps defending with ease. But then one thing changes. The wooden sword clips a few strands of MC's hair. He realizes Heinrich has started using aura, but he still can read every move. Screaming like crazy, the boy tells him to keep trying to dodge. Elsid snorts at the idea of him attacking this wildly after already losing once. He's an amateur and doesn't even know how to manage his stamina. As Leon defends, he realizes aura can boost the body, but only up to a point. After another block, the protagonist notices something. He spots an opening and strikes hard, smashing the boy's leg. The hit clearly lands, and Heinrich grows even more furious. Then he jumps back to make some distance. Clutching his hurt leg, he calls Leon an idiot and says he should have finished him already. He yells that attacks like that won't take him down, but the next second, something feels off, and the boy gets hammered by a fast barrage of blows. Elsid asks what MC thinks, and he says she was right. If he wants to train his vision, he needs a moving target. Heinrich struggles back up and, sounding desperate, says he surrenders. Helmet immediately announces the winner is Leon, and the crowd erupts in cheers. Only Heinrich's friends stay quiet, looking shaken and nervous. Later that night, people are still talking about him taking on Elman's group. One student says he had no idea the protagonist was that strong. He challenged them one by one, starting with Jeff, and every single one lost badly enough to end up in the infirmary. Now only Elman is left, and someone wonders if even he could really lose. Elsid calls the others easy prey. Pretty swordplay, but no spirit. She says she can't believe they're that weak even with aura. Leon answers that today should be different, and the sword warns him not to let his guard down against Elman. MC steps into the arena and faces his next opponent. Elman is already waiting for him, dead serious. Aura rolls off him, and Elsid notes he's finally dropped the arrogance. Leon agrees. He can tell Elman is physically stronger than him when aura is involved. He also remembers the status window the sword showed earlier. It mentioned sword vision, but since it's only level 1, the protagonist doubts it's that strong. Unknown skills are the scariest, and he may not be able to read this one with his own vision. Looking pleased, Elman says he didn't expect his chance would really come. MC answers calmly, asking if that's so, then says he knew this was coming all along. That only makes Elman more annoyed. He thinks he will be the perfect warm-up before his duel with the other him. Even if the protagonist is impressive without aura, Elman believes he's weaker once aura enters the fight. If Elman can even coat his sword in aura, blocking those attacks with a wooden blade would be dangerous. Knowing that, MC considers avoiding a head-on clash and baiting him instead. Then Helmet starts the match. Right away, a blast of energy whips past Leon's face and catches him off guard. A thin cut opens on his cheek and he wonders if that was sword energy. Across the arena, Elman levels his aura-covered sword at him. He starts thinking he may not be able to handle this. The speed gap is huge. Elman settles into stance, his aura turning even more threatening. Leon admits that even if the guy is awful, he's still a direct descendant of a Count's family. With a smug grin, Elman says it's no surprise the others lost. If the protagonist had only beaten some loud common fool, that'd be one thing, but this is different. He says if MC agrees to join him now, he'll overlook their little grudge. But before he can finish, something rushes toward him. Leon barely dodges and his blade grazes Elman's face. The two separate again, and a cut now marks Elman's cheek. Irritated, he spits out a response. Now furious, Elman yells that he is getting cocky just because he learned a few worthless tricks. The protagonist only smiles and asks, "Is that so?" Offended, Elsid repeats, "Worthless skills?" Then she calls out to Leon, and he answers. She asks if that weak little brat really just called her skill useless. Startled, MC calls back to Elsid. She snaps that people say even rivers and mountains change in 10 years, yet after 300 years she's being mocked by some bedwetting kid. Leon suddenly feels a dangerous pressure appear out of nowhere. She asks if he can see the white-toothed brat, and he nervously says yes. Then she says, one of the worst insults for a teacher is being looked down on by a student, and if that boy still has all his teeth after this test, he will answer for it. He thinks 1 or 2 teeth won't do, he'll knock out as many as he can. Elman looks thrown off and asks what kind of spirit that is. Leon bursts forward with amazing speed and starts hammering him with attacks while Elman tries his best to defend. He's clearly shocked by the force behind those blows. In the stands, people shout that Elman is getting pushed back, but Blonde, the protagonist, says no. MC has the momentum, but Elman still hasn't been forced out of the ring yet. Meanwhile, Leon thinks this is bad. He's overdoing it, and if not for Elman's aura, Blonde, he says the fight would turn into a battle of endurance. Angry now, Elman snarls that the protagonist is annoyingly stubborn and should have stayed down where he belonged. MC fires back that Elman should look at himself. He gets ready to cover his lack of power and speed with Rodrigo's vision. That ability lets him read what his opponent will do, and he thinks if he can catch the attack just a little sooner, he can close the gap. He has to read movements more clearly, faster, and across a wider range until suddenly something changes in the enemy before him. It's insane. Everything starts to feel like they're fighting underwater. Leon blocks a strike that seemed almost too fast to follow, and shifts into a stance that mirrors Elman exactly. Excited, the protagonist realizes his idea is working. Even more furious, Elman curses and demands to know if MC really can't use aura. The examiner still senses none from Leon, and can't believe he pushed Elman this far. Then Elman smiles darkly and says he can't believe he is making him use this against someone like him. Uneasy, the protagonist wonders what he's about to do. Elman activates a new power around his body and sword, and MC realizes it's arcane fencing. Now his enemy can shift between thrusts, stabs, and slashes, and he knows he can't waste even a single moment. Elman closes in to strike, and Leon reads the move. A stab. He knows he can dodge it. Elman lunges hard, and the protagonist avoids it, but the next move catches him off guard. That first attack was only a feint. The technique is built on the idea that the target will dodge. It's the Warbin family's secret move, aimed straight at the torso. Even if you evade, it'll still smash into your ribs, and broken ribs end the fight. Even with his vision tracing the sword's path, Leon knows he can't fully escape. He thinks he's going to get hit. He's going to lose. His eyes flare brighter, his hair bristles up, and one thought screams through his mind. Move. He drives himself so hard that part of his clothes tear from the force, but instead of retreating, he leaps over Elman. Elman looks up in shock, unable to believe it. From above, Leon slams down a hard strike, and Elman clearly feels it. MC lands behind him, while Elman freezes, stunned that he actually got hit. Then he turns and glares at him in fury. Someone comments that the protagonist only struck the left arm, and wonders if one arm against two really puts Elman at a disadvantage. Blonde MC tells Karen to forget the arm. What matters is the shock of the Warbin family's arcane fencing failing. Elman thinks it's not over yet. If he uses both hands in a direct clash, he'll take control. And when he does, Leon's wooden sword should finally break under his aura. So he decides that's how he'll win. As he charges, Elman yells that he has been dancing in his palm the whole time and mocks him as a commoner. But the protagonist answers with an upward swing that lands clean and knocks Elman's sword away. Elman doesn't even seem to understand what just happened. Then the next hit crashes straight into his mouth, sending spit flying. Teeth scatter everywhere from the blow. The crowd goes wild, and Karen looks thrilled for Leon. Then Helmut, clearly satisfied, declares MC the winner. A little later, Elsid proudly says her student did well. Beaten by a useless skill, Elman should watch his mouth next time. Lionel wonders if losing once will be enough to fix that attitude, but says it should be fine, since they swore to accept the duel's result. Elsid says she was actually surprised instead, leaving Leon confused. She explains that he just opened the door to acceleration, and he's growing far faster than she expected. Not really getting it, he asks. Acceleration? As Helmut picks teeth off the floor, he thinks the protagonist really knocked out quite a few. Sometime later, MC walks through the halls, rubbing his shoulder. He asks Elsid if acceleration was what happened when he dodged Elman's arcane fencing. She asks if he knows there are times when the body moves slower than the mind, and says that in acceleration, reflex can outrun conscious thought. It's not about simple speed. So she asks how Leon thinks trained swordsmen move so fast. He says it's because they learn to use aura. Elsid says that's only partly true. Without aura, the body can't handle that kind of power. Usually, only a few people learn acceleration after mastering aura. But Leon used it before ever learning aura, and only in his legs. Even incomplete, that was impressive. It means he pushed past his limits on instinct and pure will. He smiles, then pauses. He asks if she didn't just say his body shouldn't be able to handle it, because he feels totally fine. Maybe it was because he only used part of it? Elsid says that's basically it. If he'd used it through his whole body, his insides would have been turned inside out. Now worried, the protagonist asks if that isn't extremely dangerous. Elsid says that means it's time, and for now he should take care of his body. Leon asks what she means. Time for what? And then the side effect of acceleration suddenly hits him hard from the side. Elsid answers, simple, muscle pain. She tells him to be thankful the pain only hit after using acceleration, and warns him not to try it again until he learns aura, or it'll kill him. Groaning from the pain, Leon says he gets it already. A new day begins at the academy. MC walks across campus through the crowd. A few girls whisper as he goes by, and soon it's obvious everyone is talking about him. Some claim he was raised on experiments and elixirs. Others say he's hiding his real name and was sent from the palace as a secret weapon. Then he runs into the group he beat before and figures they helped spread those stories. Elsid says losers always make excuses and mocks the noble's pride, but Leon points out that if they had any pride, they never would have messed with him. Elsid admits that's fair, and then he notices someone ahead. It's Karen looking at him softly. She greets him, "Hi," the protagonist. Caught off guard, he blurts out, "Karen?" Later, the two talk outside. With a smile, Leon asks how she's been and whether she should be in alchemy class right now, then teases her about skipping. Karen calls him an idiot, says her teacher was sick, so class got cancelled, and asks if he really thinks she'd skip just to see him. Then she trails off and smiles. Resting against a chair, she says something about him feels different, which leaves MC confused. Then she asks if he's been avoiding her lately, and why he suddenly started fighting nobles. She wants to know if he has any idea how worried she and Leon were. That catches him off guard, and he lowers his head. While she scolds him, he realizes how much time has passed for them to talk this openly and comfortably. Then it clicks for him. He finally understands how the other he felt about her, why he was jealous of him being by her side. It all came from feeling inferior, like he had nothing special. He hated living in a world where hard work wasn't enough, and he blamed himself for that. Then he remembers when Elsid first appeared, offering him a chance to prove those feelings weren't empty. Karen says his fights made him famous around the school, and now some people are even saying he only got stronger because he found a magic sword. She studies him for a second, and then notices that he's crying. The sudden change makes her tense. Trying to calm things down, she asks why he's crying and says they're only rumors. She adds that the part about the sword is probably made up, but Leon says it's not really like that. Karen keeps watching him with concern. The protagonist thinks that even though Elsid is rude and awful to deal with, she still picked him up when he was at his lowest. Meanwhile, Elsid snacks on a cookie and grumbles, "What now, Leon, you brat? I already apologized because the mood got weird." Then Elsid wonders why he suddenly matured, even if only a little. MC thinks that if a hero is someone who saves the world, then Elsid is his hero. So he decides to become someone worthy of that title too. Someone as strong as the one who wields the sacred sword, and someone who can go beyond Elsid's expectations. Karen keeps staring at him, clearly not following any of this. Elsid says she doesn't really get it either. One minute he was just talking to a girl, and the next he'd grown a little. She says someone born perfect like her couldn't be expected to understand. Still, Elsid says the reason doesn't matter. What matters is that this Nami finally looks worth training. Right after that, Leon suddenly stiffens, covered in goosebumps. Karen calls out to him in worry. That night, in the student quarters, he lies in bed thinking. He knows he really has changed. He remembers Karen telling him he seems much better now, which left him confused. She said he doesn't look so nervous anymore and can finally face forward. To her, he still seemed like Leon, but not quite the same. One version was always looking up, the other looking ahead. That surprises him. He thinks it would be nice if he could talk to the protagonist once in a while, because no one else in his year can be honest with him and truly stay by his side. So he told her, "I'll see what I can do." Curled up in bed, he quietly apologizes to Karen. He knows he probably can't do that. Their next duel will be the last, and all he can think is, Somewhere else, the blonde Leon looks out into the night. Lost in thought, he murmurs, "MC." The next day, a training dummy gets slammed hard. He has already broken another wooden sword, and Elsid wonders how even a perfectly good practice sword can't last. She says his training isn't just improving his technique. His style hits so hard it puts too much stress on the weapon, and practice swords are weaker than real ones. Leon says he only managed that move once because a trump card works best the first time. If he keeps relying on it, a genius like the protagonist will read him, predict it, and shut it down. Elseed asks if seeing the protagonist's status a few days ago got under his skin that badly. The terminal showed that the blonde MC was level 25, loaded with skills, and a swordsman blessed with talent and noble blood. He had been shocked that someone at the intermediate level could use an energy blade, and that the blonde him could even cover his body with aura. That already puts him above the instructors, at a level most gifted knights don't reach until their 30s. After comparing the numbers, Leon realizes he loses in strength and agility, but has a little more stamina. Even so, he fires himself up, saying the protagonist is still someone he can beat. Elsid likes that answer and says she'll teach him everything she can. He needs to use that advice as the base for winning the duel against the other Leon, and that thought excites him. Then he calls out, "Elsid, if, and only if he loses to MC, what happens next?" That catches Elsid off guard, but she refuses to answer. When he asks why, she says this is part of his test. She reminds him she warned him from the start. The trials ahead would be far harsher than the chances he'd be given. Uneasy, he asks if that's too much for a first trial, but Elsid says this fight may decide the course of his life. If he beats Leon, then she'll tell him everything, and once he hears it, he'll understand why. The day passes with the protagonist training without rest until the sky breaks and heavy rain starts pouring. Somewhere else, someone says the results were better than expected. An older man says he knew the others weren't weak, while the blonde Leon watches the rain by the window. Still, he didn't expect MC to beat Elmont. MC tells Sir Dilbert that it sounds like he finally accepts the results now, remembering how doubtful he used to be about those evaluations. The old man smiles and says that was 3 years ago. For the right person, 3 years is plenty. Since he defeated a Count's second son without even being able to use aura, there's no reason left to question his potential. Then he adds that Leon sent a message today saying he's ready. The old man lights up. Finally. Then the young man addresses Sir Gilbert and asks for a favor, thinking he'll defeat the protagonist and make him his knight no matter what. And beyond that, his thoughts drift to Karen. Rain continues pounding the academy. Leon walks the halls as thunder cracks outside. Nervous, he says it feels like heaven itself is setting the stage for this battle. Elsid answers that a hero is risking his future, so of course even the heavens would react. Helmet says MC arrived right on time, and he notices how quiet everything is today. The instructor explains that this was his request. He wanted a match with no crowd so he could focus, unlike the earlier fights held here. Elsid says Elmont only wanted to humiliate him in public, and Leon lets out a nervous laugh. The instructor goes on, saying that with no audience, there will be only one observer besides the witness. The protagonist asks who it is. Elsid seems to understand right away. MC asks if she knows too, then guesses it's Karen, which only makes him more nervous. Tense, he asks why it would be her, and Elsid says he still doesn't get it. Since the blonde protagonist thinks he likes Karen, he plans to use this duel to push her toward him. Elsid explains that battles over a woman between a ruler and his follower are nothing new. That makes MC remember the deal. If he loses this fight, he becomes MC's subordinate. The thought instantly makes him furious. He thinks back to his one-on-one moments with the protagonist, remembering when they sat under the tree, and then the duel agreement they made, including the part where the loser would serve the winner. That alone gives enough reason for Karen to be there as the observer. Leon is drawing a clear line between who leads and who follows. It's exactly the kind of careful move MC would make, even if it ignores what he or Karen actually want. He had suspected it before, but now he's sure the protagonist really is a true high noble, someone who uses other people's feelings and relationships like pieces on a board. If that's what noble life looks like, then Leon is sickened by it. Elsid notices his fists clenching. She points out that he's angry, and MC admits it. He says this should never have happened, and now he's going to teach that fool a lesson. Soon, the two boys stand in the arena before the judge. With a faint smile, the blonde Leon says he's late, but he answers with a hard stare that he's the one who came early. Then the protagonist glances around and asks where the observer is, saying he heard the protagonist invited someone. With a smile, the judge says the observer is watching from somewhere out of sight so nothing distracts him. That way, nobody can blame the result on a bad call. Our hero gives him a dry look and asks if that's really true. Then he says they should begin already, but Leon cuts in. He pulls out a pill and swallows it at once. Our hero frowns and asks what he just took. Leon says it's a pill that seals his aura. Even if he promises not to use it, it might come out on its own, and he doesn't want that deciding the match. Even saying that, MC looks uneasy. The instructor gives him a weapon, and he asks if they're ready. Both fighters square up. Our hero can tell the protagonist means business. Nothing like his usual self. Still, when it comes to staying focused, he won't lose either. Helmet gives the order and their swords crash together. Leon comes in hard while our hero holds him off, clearly feeling the pressure. MC keeps pushing forward with a storm of fast strikes, and everyone gets blocked. Even so, our hero realizes he misjudged how much force he could handle. If he keeps meeting those blows head-on, he won't last half a minute. Leon attacks again right away, even stronger than before. Our hero barely stops it. The pressure rattles him. His sword moves like a whip. He quickly understands the protagonist is far above Helmet, and that's not all. Leon assumes he's already using Rodrigo's vision, but his movements look hazier than anyone else our hero has fought, so he forces himself to settle down. Whatever the vision misses, he'll make up for with all the times they've crossed blades before, even as MC keeps the pressure on. Gilbert can hardly believe students are fighting at this level. Helmet is just as stunned. Even without aura, their sword skill might be better than some knights. Our hero grits his teeth. Leon is strong, a real monster. At the same time, he wonders when he got this strong. Gilbert keeps watching in shock. He already knew his lord was a genius, but he never thought anyone his age could stay even with him. Leon keeps attacking without stopping. Our hero senses a second layer hidden inside the offense. He strains to read it, then strikes forward at the exact moment the protagonist attacks. A cut opens across our hero's chest armor, but MC is stunned to see a lock of his own hair severed by the counter. Our hero resets his stance while Leon, a little annoyed, checks his hair. Catching his breath, our hero realizes why his attacks after the first one felt weaker. The protagonist figures it out too. This whole fight was meant to become a battle of stamina. He watches our hero control his breathing, and that small smile makes him wonder if he walked right into the trap. They stare each other down. Leon decides he has to stay close, wear him out, and slowly take control. One mistake ruins that plan. There's nothing flashy about it, just a stubborn will to win, and MC feels it clearly. He knows he has to crush that spirit first, or he'll never make him submit, so he brings out one of his techniques. Gilbert is shocked. Leon is using fast steps, an imperial family arcane art. Under that pressure, our hero remembers what it does. It drives the muscles and blood flow harder so the body can go past its normal limit. He knows it isn't complete without aura, but even half its power should be enough. Our hero pushes back too, forcing his senses to their limit. Leon rushes in with a crushing blow, and our hero still knocks it away. The protagonist feels the hit lacked depth and wonders, did he really dodge that? Grabbing his hurt arm, our hero asks if that was quick step, and whether MC really isn't using aura. Then Elcid whispers that he isn't. No aura at all. Startled, our hero jumps. After calming down, he asks if that's true, and Elcid says the human body can do far more than people think. There are techniques for speed, but also ones that raise strength and endurance. So he shouldn't judge too quickly, and before he can think more, Leon is already on him again. Annoyed, he demands to know how he can get distracted and still look so calm. Sensing the strike, our hero fires back that he could ask the same thing, and asks if the protagonist is relying only on arcane swordsmanship now. Inside, he curses that Elcid's sudden voice threw off his rhythm. Then he remembers Elcid warning him not to measure everything by common sense, right as a blade grazes his cheek. In that instant, he realizes Elcid didn't interrupt him at all. He plants his feet. Leon stays focused, but there's tension in him now. Our hero sees it clearly. It's only 5 or 6 more steps. He's been driving MC toward this the whole time. Now his presence feels heavier. Gilbert is shaken by the change. The whole atmosphere shifted, but his quick steps shouldn't be something anyone can break through. Until now, our hero believed there was only one way to win. Hold out, protect his small edge and stamina, and wait for quick step to wear Leon down. That was because his own strength was acceleration. With a smirk, he mutters that this isn't fun. The protagonist tenses, confused. Our hero narrows his focus. The only thing he needs to believe in is the power he built with his own hands. To Leon, for the first time, he looks enormous. Grinning, MC thinks, that's right. This is who he is. No matter what, he'll make him his subordinate, and he uses quick step again. The judge thinks he should already be near his limit after using that move so many times without aura. Elcid seems to enjoy all of it. Leon steels himself. If the other boy is a real hero, then this much shouldn't stop him. Our hero remembers everything they've been through and thinks, the protagonist, you still don't get it. The real difference between them isn't talent at birth, but the fact that he swings his sword every single day. The storm outside keeps raging. Our hero charges in and Leon rushes to meet him. Their blades collide and one sword explodes apart. MC stares in shock as his own weapon breaks. He looks down at the ruined sword in his hand, unable to believe it. Satisfied, Elcid says all that hard work finally paid off. Our hero agrees and explains the key was a trick he learned from Lionel's rising strike. It was an odd sword move that threw off the timing of the upper body. He recalls the moment it landed in the fight. Then he adds that what mattered most was the difference in how many swords each of them had broken before. Looking at Leon on the ground, he says his talent lets his body go past its limits, but he knows the limits of a sword. With real blades, the result might have changed. He walks up and points his sword at the protagonist. With a smile, he says, "I won, MC." Gilbert claps and declares the result. The victory belongs to the one who should have become Leon's subordinate. Then he asks what reward he wants for winning. He remembers his own promise, that he'd grant any request, as long as it didn't harm his honor or his family. Thinking it over, our hero realizes there isn't really anything he wants. The protagonist admits he lost, and since he chose this duel, he has to accept the result. A promise is a promise, so what does our hero want? But our hero only smiles at him. Without making a big deal of it, he says he'll decide later, leaving Leon surprised. He explains that nothing comes to mind right now, so he'll tell him when he thinks of something. Is that fine? MC and Gilbert both stare, caught off guard. Then he smiles and says, "It's fine." Our hero feels the ache in his body and thinks that even without using acceleration, he still pushed himself too far, because his opponent was Leon. Then a voice speaks up. "Oh, light of healing, please give rest to the wounded." Karen appears and casts healing magic on him. Excited, our hero says he already feels better. That's exactly what he expected from a 4th rank healing spell. He thanks her for being the observer, but Karen looks upset. With tears in her eyes, she says she can't understand him or Leon at all, and asks if this means he really lost. Our hero is a little shaken by her reaction. As she wipes her tears, Karen says he's gotten so much stronger. Then she suddenly asks if he plans to leave the academy, catching him off guard. He asks how she knows. Karen says she knows him too well and calls him an idiot. Leon looks oddly calm and happy, but says he thought she'd try to stop him. Irritated, Karen snaps that he had no right to say that when he never planned to listen anyway. She says he's always been like this, pushing past what everyone thought was impossible. And in the end, he always managed it. The protagonist says it was actually pretty quick, considering how hard it was. Karen shoots back that it took way too long. While she broods over it, our hero starts laughing. A moment later, the two of them can't stop laughing. He says he's fine for now and tells her to go beat up Leon instead. Chloe blinks and asks, "Aren't I supposed to heal you?" He says MC may hide it, but he's probably crushed and still trying to process the loss. So if his girlfriend goes after him, that beating might actually help him grow from this loss. With that, he says Leon is in her hands. Chloe just stands there speechless as he walks off, then suddenly calls out his name and asks what he'll do after leaving the academy. He waves back and says that for now, it's still a secret. Chloe looks surprised for a second, then clasps her hands and quietly prays for him. Elsid says he never expected a mage who doesn't believe in gods to pray for someone. Leon replies that she really is a kind person. Elsid asks if he's done with everything, and he says yes. He says he always wanted to become someone special, and Elsid asks what he means by special. The protagonist says he threw himself into everything with all he had. Still, he couldn't break past things like status and talent, and he lost his way when he compared himself to those gifted people. But after meeting Elsid, a lot in his life changed for the better. Elsid pulled him out of the inferiority complex buried deep in his heart and helped him step out of those two people's shadow. And now, it's time for him to become a hero. So who could be more special than him? Elsid looks at him and says he's pretty materialistic. Leon asks, "Just because I want some wealth and honor? What's wrong with wanting to be famous?" He says ambition is a big part of being human, and dreams are what keep people moving forward. As long as they don't go down the wrong path, ambition is part of what makes people human. That's why Elsid chose him. The one who was meant to become the hero wasn't Leon. It was the other MC. Stunned, he asks what Elsid means. Elsid reveals that he's the true son of the Empire's royal line, Clyde, the sword meant to restore the fallen empire. His full name is his Callum Gladius von Clyde, and he was named the hero 150 years ago. The truth leaves the protagonist shaken. Then he says that guy really does sound like the perfect main character, and if he was supposed to be the hero, then maybe he isn't anymore. Leon asks if that's true, reminding Elsid that the duel was supposed to test him. Elsid says yes, and that he passed. There's no rule saying a hero has to be chosen by prophecy or an oracle. If someone builds their future through strength and will, that counts too. On that point, the other MC was wrong. He thinks it over. Elsid asks if he feels guilty for taking the other boy's chance, but he says not at all, that the protagonist was born with everything. Why would he feel bad for someone who already had so much more than him? That's impossible. Elsid seems surprised by that answer. Then MC says the loss was the other boy's own fault for being beaten by someone like him. Someone who started with nothing while the other had every advantage. Elsid is even more surprised. He adds that Rodrigo's soul chose him, and the Holy Sword chose him too. If that's true, then he just has to live up to those expectations. At last, Elsid lets out a pleased sigh. The next day, Leon asked to leave the academy. His instructor was sad to see him go become an adventurer, but promised to write him a recommendation letter. He also says the protagonist's fight with Elmont's group pushed both nobles and commoners to work harder, and it changed the academy. So with that settled, MC probably won't need to come back to the academy again. Fired up, he says it's time to head to the free city of Blaine, where adventurers gather. An eagle watches from above. It glides over the forest under a clear sky. Then, Leon bursts out of the brush like a madman. He stops to catch his breath and says he's finally out of that cursed forest. Then he drops to his knees in relief. Excited, he spots Blaine in the distance and says he'll finally get to sleep in a bed after leaving the academy 15 days ago. Elsid asks what he means by cursed forest and says Leon should be thankful. It became a training ground for him. With heavy sarcasm, he says he's so grateful he could cry just for getting out. They've spent the last 15 days crossing that forest on the way to Blaine. It was his first time camping in a forest, and goblins attacked often. In those rough conditions, Elsid let him use the sacred sword instead of the wooden one he had brought from the academy. Leon faced every challenge and used those 15 days to get used to the sacred sword and train with it. Elsid says it still took him a week longer than expected. The protagonist thanks him for the training and says the goblins had been a pain from the start. Elsid asks if he managed to take down 10 of them in under 10 seconds, adding that even if he did, it was only possible because of the footwork training. Leon thinks he's definitely stronger now than when he entered that forest, and if it were up to him, he'd start wiping out monsters from here on out. Elsid says he sounds pretty fired up, but tells him to wait for the right time, which makes MC curious. Elsid explains that he is still like a jar being shaped, and killing monsters to gain strength is what fills that jar. If the jar isn't finished yet, anything poured into it will just leak out, and the effort will be wasted. Leon says he gets it and won't forget. Much later, as they get close to the city walls, they finally arrive at Blaine. At the gate, the protagonist gets past the guards and heads into the busy streets. He says he's glad entering the city went smoothly, and that people really trust Academy IDs. Then Elsid casually mentions this city. It's basically a bandit town. Startled, Leon asks, "A bandit town?" Elsid says places like this have existed for around 300 years. It's not tiny, but it's not exactly huge either. For a city this size, it's pretty disorganized, and security around here isn't great. That makes Leon a little nervous, and he admits he still feels pretty inexperienced. Elsid asks where he wants to go first. An inn? But MC says no, he wants to find a guild. It's better to register early while there's no rush, and Elsid agrees since he did say he wants to become an adventurer. A mercenary job would also work, but adventurers have a lot more freedom to move around. He has no interest in getting dragged into noble power struggles. More than that, he wants to use the perks of being a hero, so monster hunting quests sound best. Elsid says it'll still be a long time before his seal is released. Leon thinks that besides training in the forest, he also learned a lot about Elsid. Because Elsid appeared a year earlier than the Oracle said he would, most of his power as a sacred sword is sealed. Normally, the wielder of a sacred sword would heal fast, be almost impossible to kill, gain huge physical boosts, and use aura and holy power. But since Leon can't use aura yet, he'll need to get much stronger to draw out the sword's full power. Later that afternoon, at the Adventurers Guild, a girl thanks him for registering under the name The Protagonist. She says she checked his academy record and the recommendation letter from Helmet, so he'll begin at rank D. MC asks if she's Rise and wants to know what rank D means. She explains it decides what jobs he can take, though he should move up fast. To reach rank B, he'll need to prove he can use an aura weapon, and getting to A or S takes much longer. Leon can't believe aura is required. Beyond just being able to circulate it, an aura weapon shows you can control aura outside your body. A sword strong enough to smash stone and cut steel. That's where true superhuman power begins. He thinks if that only gets you to rank B, then ranks A and S must be on another level. Elsid says this group is more interesting than he expected, and notes that there are many humanoid races here. Leon then notices several people staring at him, including some cat-like humanoids and others that look like elves. Elsid points out werewolves, elves, and even high elves. He can't believe races that were fighting 300 years ago are now working together. Whoever built this organization must be very capable. Rise smiles and asks if something's wrong. Leon awkwardly says it's nothing, and she tells him that's fine. Then she says his registration is done, but to become an official adventurer, he has to clear one mission with no reward. The protagonist is stunned. No reward? So it's just free labor? He asks if there's really nothing, and Rise says yes. He has to earn the guild's approval before he can be recognized as a real adventurer. Recognition has a price. Elsid says that's just how the world works, and Leon tells him to shut up. Soon after, in the city's sewers, dark tunnels stretch ahead. MC runs through the foul water, fighting off monsters as he handles his first mission. He says it's the first time he's ever fought rats with a sword. Elsid reminds him his sword style is built for one-on-one combat, so against these things, the only answer is to keep cutting them down. He adds that there's no better training than fighting every kind of enemy, whether it comes from the ground or the sky. Leon thinks Elsid is the last one who should be giving advice like that. Elsid says there's no getting around it. He accepted the sewer job, so he has to finish it. That only makes him more annoyed. Still, he keeps fighting and eventually wipes out every last one of them. But then something unusual grabs his attention. He points deeper into the nest and tells Elsid to look. Why does that rat man have a horn? Elsid explains it's an evolved type. Leon questions that, so he adds that some monsters change after living a long time or taking in huge amounts of energy. He says it's similar to a hobgoblin, and the protagonist immediately asks if that means it's dangerous. Elsid tells him the horn proves it has a special ability, and the larger the horn, or the more it has, the more dangerous that power is. The rat man suddenly gathers energy into the tip of its horn, making MC tense up. He quickly asks if there's any way to know what kind of power it has. Elsid says it'd be better for Leon to experience it once for himself, though he adds that this one's power is pretty useless. He asks what he means. Elsid explains that the ability is a curse, and the protagonist quietly raises his sacred sword. With a roar, the creature fires off its power, a plague curse, straight at him. The curse hits the sacred sword and disappears on contact. Pleased, Leon says it didn't work. That rat picked the wrong target today. Then fired up, he tells the creature to hand over its horn. Sometime later, back at the Adventurers Guild, MC arrives carrying a stuffed bag. The receptionist jumps when he drops the sack onto the counter. Staring at it, she asks if it's all Ratman tails. There are 23 kilos of them. Leon does the math in his head. That means 230 Ratmen, and tells her she's exactly right. Then he sets down another bundle and inside are several horns. He says they're Ratman horns. Out of around 200 kills, only 3 or 4 had them. So he asks if the guild can buy those too. She freezes for a second and he calls out to her. She finally answers with a nervous yes, then totals everything up. 13 silver and 50 copper. Leon says that's much more than he expected, and Reese explains that the horns are rare and sell well. She adds that no one has ever brought back this much on a first mission, and she's honestly impressed. The protagonist, embarrassed, asks if that's really such a big deal. She says even one Ratman would have been enough to impress her, but taking down 4 evolved ones at his age means he must be incredibly skilled. She calls him amazing, and MC is happy, just way too shy to show it. At last, she congratulates him, Mr. Leon. From this point on, he's officially a D-rank adventurer, and the seal on his emblem marks the free city of Blaine. He asks if he can use it anywhere, and Rise says yes, but adventurers ranked B and below get lower priority when they work at other branches. As the protagonist studies the emblem, she explains it's meant to stop people from only taking easy jobs they like. He says he gets it. Holding the emblem, he realizes this is proof he isn't just an academy student anymore. He's an adventurer. Rise tells Mr. Leon that if he wants any request in particular, he should ask her. Even without much authority, she might still help. MC smiles at the emblem in his hand, and as he leaves the guild that afternoon, he thinks that might be useful. Elsid sounds oddly pleased about something and says the receptionist seems to have mistaken him for a holy knight. Startled, he asks why. Elsid points out that the protagonist picked a hard job with bad pay, and in the past, knights used to travel like that before their title was revealed. So for someone like MC, the guess isn't completely wrong. Then MC blinks. Seriously? Elsid says she'd probably pass out one day if she ever learned the truth, but he says he can't just tell her. Elsid laughs and says imagine it, a receptionist assigned to a hero. In a few decades, she'd be a guild legend. She could probably live off books about it, but the protagonist insists he never lied. She just assumed things on her own. Thinking it over, Leon realizes this really isn't so different from a journey to help people. Since he'll be staying in Blaine for a while, this seems a lot better than living under suspicion. So he tells Elsid he plans to leave only after reaching rank B. That catches Elsid off guard. Leon then asks how long rank B would take. Elsid answers right away. 100 days is enough. MC is clearly surprised, but Elsid says he had planned to go easy on him for 6 months. Looks like that won't happen now. Even as training, he still can't believe his successor is ranking up by cleaning sewers. He calls it shameful, while he thinks at least it paid a little and wonders what kind of logic that is. Elsid says Leon needs to get as strong as possible, and eventually bring down at least one dragon. The protagonist panics, asking how the target jumped that far so fast. But Elsid says MC already learned the basics of sight and footwork, and now he'll sharpen them through real combat. On top of that, he has a special advantage. He can absorb the power of monsters he defeats. In simple terms, he builds up points. Leon realizes this must be the link between monsters and aura Elsid mentioned before. He remembers the energy he felt after killing those monsters and thinks the old training methods and elixirs from noble families really must have worked for aura growth. Elsid says the truth is, anyone can absorb monster power and turn it into aura. The nobles and royals of the past just hid that secret so only they could use it. The protagonist thinks most of the people who buried that knowledge are gone now, and only Elcid still knows the truth. With that knowledge, handling monsters becomes easier, but even 1,000 ratmen still wouldn't be enough. Elcid says once Leon gets used to the process, he'll move on to stronger prey and eventually a dragon. Shocked, MC asks if he was actually serious. Elcid snaps that of course he was. His sacred sword isn't some cleaning tool. Does it really make sense to use it for air cleaning and purification? He remembers asking Elcid to purify him after he came out of the sewers. And yes, with those amazing powers, Elcid got him spotless again. But he clearly hasn't let that go. So Leon asks why he's so set on dragon hunting. Elcid explains that someday they'll have to go to the Titan Mountain range. The protagonist goes pale. Titan Mountain is Dragonland. He wouldn't go near that place on purpose. It's a region ruled by giant kings, basically the demon realm. He asks why they'd go somewhere even old kingdoms couldn't conquer. Elcid says Leon will be able to help. His body was left there, and because he lost his memory, he can't recall much else. So their goal is to reach that land in 6 months. MC thinks it over and asks if they're really heading there to search for something Elcid can't even remember. Elcid says it'll be fine. They won't be wasting time until then. He just has to become strong enough to protect himself. With a confident smile, Elcid tells him to trust him. He is the sacred sword after all. That finally makes the protagonist smile. He agrees. Nothing he's trusted so far has failed him yet. Elcid immediately says that means hellish training starts now, and MC is terrified. Sometime later, at the Adventurers Guild, 2 men are making fun of someone, asking if that cat is going ratman hunting again today. The guy they're mocking snaps back, asking who they just called a cat and calling them idiots. The other says he heard he's been piling up kills every single day. He figures that because he got famous for hunting ratmen, the guild gave him the nickname Cat. Reaching the counter, he drops another full pouch onto it. Breeze smiles and says, "This haul is smaller than usual." The protagonist agrees. He says there weren't many ratmen around this time, and only a few attacked him. He figures they're starting to fear him. Rise says ratmen may look stupid, but they do have some brains. Leon says that's why he wants to see other jobs. She spreads a few papers out on the counter, excitedly saying she knew this day would come, so she picked out 4 missions for him herself. MC and Elcid look them over, thinking about what to take, when one of them suddenly catches his eye. Looking closer, he notices the request papers seem really old. Elcid says that means nobody wanted the job, and it was never renewed either. Leon grins and says that's the one. He'll take it. Later, while walking through the city, he says the mission is to hunt a rocky slime. They live in the ground near the wall because they eat stone. He wonders if the request really came from Blaine's defense captain, and says there's no way a guy like that would try to take advantage of him. When Leon reaches a small gate in the wall, he shows the guard his request paper. The guard looks confused and says this is about subduing stone slimes, but he never asked for that. The protagonist asks how that can be, since the paper is an official guild request. The defense captain says it has to be some kind of mistake. Then someone suddenly walks over and asks if Leon is the adventurer who cleared out the sewer ratmen so well. MC says yes, that's him, and the man praises him, saying they need more adventurers like that. The man rants that those guys only pick easy jobs and still call themselves adventurers. He asks him if that isn't ridiculous. A bit later, the protagonist heads inside the city wall. He remembers the man saying that if he does well, there could be extra pay, so he plans to give it his all. Still, Leon feels uneasy. The way that man talked made the job sound rough. Elcid says extra rewards sound great, but MC points out the place is wet and slippery, so this won't be easy without skill. The sword calls it the perfect place to train his footwork, and MC quickly tells him to hold on. Up ahead, 3 slimes bounce down the passage toward him. He blurts out that there are 3, and Elcid snaps at him to use his vision. He reminds the protagonist that if they were ordinary slimes, adventurers wouldn't avoid this mission. The protagonist gets what he means. Then a rock suddenly appears right in front of him. It comes so fast he barely has time to dodge. The stone slams into the wall, and MC panics, asking where it came from. Elcid tells him to look ahead. Right in front of him, a slime rushes in. Almost by reflex, he raises his sword. He blocks the slam, but the force still drives his blade back. Caught off guard, he realizes that's why they're called rocky slimes. Elcid says Leon probably knows this already, but every slime has one weak point: the core. If he breaks the core in the center, the whole slime goes down. No matter what kind it is, that's the rule. The protagonist focuses and sees the creature is packed with rock pieces. Layer after layer of stone shields the core. For a slime, it's built really well. Elcid says that's exactly why adventurers hate dealing with them. Blunt weapons can crack through their defense better. Swords and arrows should work well on normal slimes, but these ones cover that weakness with stone shards. That makes them a pain to fight with regular weapons. Then the slimes open fire, spitting rocks at Leon. The barrage tightens around him, and he uses his sacred sword to block. Even then, the slimes keep pushing closer. MC is clearly having a hard time now. Elcid points out that they know he can't stop every shot, so they're aiming for deadly spots. Then he asks Leon what he learned from that attack. He says they're shooting from more than 5 meters away, which leaves a small gap before the next volley. If he closes the distance, he might get 1 or 2 hits in, but there's still a problem. He can't break through their defense yet, so he needs a way to avoid the shards and hit the core. Then he thinks, no, I need to cut through it. Elcid looks surprised as Leon realizes that with his vision, he can watch for the instant when the rock pieces spread out inside the body, then drive the sacred sword through that opening. The hard part is that the shards never stop moving, so finding that gap won't be simple. Even with all that, the protagonist smiles. He asks if a dangerous moment can also be a chance. Elcid explains that when the rock slime opens up to fire its stones, the flow of slime inside it should pause for just a second. For someone with Leon's ability, that's the best moment to destroy the core exactly. MC asks if that's why he picked this mission, and Elcid says of course. Fired up? He says fine. He'll try it. Then he rushes the slimes with his sacred sword ready. As he gets close, he activates the vision he trained. With one clean strike, he cuts through a slime and smashes its core. He quickly understands that if his timing is off even a little, he'll be the one getting hit. Elcid says the slimes sense movement through vibrations, so Leon needs to lower the pressure he puts on the ground. The slimes keep pressing him and firing rocks. Elcid tells him this is exactly what his footwork is for, and the protagonist starts weaving through their attacks as he closes in. Excited, MC realizes he really can do this. Just like Elcid said, if he trusts his movement. But then something goes wrong, and Leon slips. He barely has time to think, what? Before he spots a cluster of rocks flying at him from the side. He focuses and puts his training to work. With effort, he regains his footing just in time to evade the incoming rocks. At that same moment, his trained vision catches another slime's core clearly. He destroys it without hesitation. Not long after, the corridor is covered in slime remains. Elcid says he probably didn't even do it on purpose, but it worked out anyway. He asks what he's talking about. Elcid says it's what the protagonist just did. That was level 2 of the footwork technique. Shocked, MC asks what? Elcid explains that level 2 starts with keeping balance on flat ground while reducing vibrations. After that, he also has to know how to use whatever is under his feet, whether it's ice, heat, or anything else. The real point is adapting to the terrain and turning a bad environment into one he can use. So even if it happened by luck, Leon lowered his center of gravity by widening his stance. Elcid asks if that isn't what happened. By dropping his normal upright posture, he gained the freedom to shift in any direction. Elcid says when the ground changes, the protagonist's posture has to change too. Up to now, his stance and movement only fit smooth, flat ground. In a place like this, with a low ceiling and wet floor, he needs a style that matches the space. Leon admits a lower stance really does make moving easier, and Elcid asks if training isn't better when it's real. MC calls him a demonic sword, and Elcid shoots back, asking what the hell he's talking about. He thinks this is only level 2, and he can't believe this counts as beginner training. Then his sword adds that, now that he thinks about it, Leon shouldn't even be dodging all the attacks anymore, even if he's getting more used to the footwork. That stuns the protagonist. Elcid asks if a tiny rock will really kill him, saying it would be better to practice taking less damage if that helps in a real fight. He says MC needs to learn how to take hits with his body, instead of desperately trying to block everything and failing. He also warns him not to depend only on burst moves. If he finds the right timing, he can cut through them cleanly, and bursts won't help much when there are only 1 or 2 enemies left. Annoyed, the protagonist tells this demonic sword to just say he wants him dead already. Elcid replies that it's for the protagonist's own good. If he gets too comfortable now, it'll hurt him later. MC argues he isn't comfortable at all, so why push this hard? Elcid says that by his standards, the MC already is. Back in those days, people are watching the entrance to the inner wall. One guard says it's been 3 weeks already and asks what time he went in. The other says before 10, before the second shift, and comments that the kid really works hard. He says the protagonist couldn't even handle the stone slimes at first, but now he comes out with a full bag every time, even though the reward isn't great. Then the people waiting nearby point and say he's coming out. Leon walks in from inside, looking serious and carrying 2 heavy bags of slime remains, leaving everyone impressed. MC says today's the last day, and one of the soldiers gives an awkward smile. Leon explains that he cleared the areas near the wall, and since these slimes breed slowly, they shouldn't be a problem for a while. He points to the bags, saying these are the final rocky slime pieces, and asks them to inform the guild that the mission is done. The soldiers exchange looks as they stare at the bags packed with slime fragments. As he walks away, he asks if that means he's ready. Elcid says yes. After all the power they gained from hunting rocky slimes, it's time for the next step, learning aura. Later at the inn, Elsid says this went faster than he expected. He thought Leon would need to absorb a fair amount of power first, since slimes are creatures built on mana, but because nobody touched that mission for so long, the training moved along much faster than expected. Now the protagonist can finally begin learning aura. Elsid says he's starting late compared to most people, then asks if he's ready. Leon answers without hesitation. Of course. Kids from noble families like MC usually go through a baptism at birth that opens their mana paths, and they build up mana with elixirs. That's one big reason status creates a gap in power. In the past, developing aura without that baptism was almost impossible. Elsid adds one warning. If someone who already had a baptism tries to force open mana paths clogged with impurities, their body might fail and they could die. That makes him tense up, but Elsid reminds him that the protagonist has been absorbing mana this whole time. And more importantly, he has the sacred sword. The sword's power will protect his mana paths and heal the damage as it happens. But the pain will be brutal, and Leon has to endure it. Elsid warns that if MC passes out, the baptism fails. Whether this works or not depends on his will. Then Elsid begins using his power in front of him. Leon watches the lights nervously as they turn into swords of light. One suddenly drops and pierces the protagonist through the back. He screams and coughs up blood. Still suffering on the floor with a sword of light in his back, MC sees several more swords of light start flying toward him. Then they all strike at once. Leon fights with everything he has to stay conscious, but the pain is written all over him. Watching this, Elsid sounds shocked that he can endure 10 swords of light. Even badly hurt, the boy stays on the ground and keeps resisting. Elsid looks out the window and realizes that now that the protagonist's aura has awakened, the people hiding in this city are much easier to sense. Later that night at the inn, Leon finally says the word, aura. He can feel that flow moving outside his body, and he senses a refined energy circling through his heart. It feels like he gained a whole new kind of power, separate from his physical strength, and for a moment he feels like he can do anything now. But Elsid quickly tells him he's wrong, leaving Leon confused. Thinking of Rodrigo Roderick, Caldeus El Vivare, Elsid says MC really is incredible, and even if awakening depends on inner strength, he still went beyond what he expected. Then Elsid grows thoughtful, asking why he seems so down, since he was the one handling his training and it all worked out. If he gets stronger, shouldn't that be a good thing for him? The issue is the method. He even took a shortcut by putting him through it with the sacred sword. If not for that, would the protagonist really be the successor of Rodrigo Roderick Caldeus El Vivare? He goes on saying Leon is Rodrigo's heir, so he should keep all his other choices open, and make sure the former hero watches from heaven. Then Elsid points at MC and says there's one more thing. He admits he thought he would only endure 5 swords at most. The baptism only opened the major vein. To use aura properly, the protagonist still has to open the smaller veins. Right now, he's just a kid with more power than before, and he still has a long way to go. Leon scratches his head and says he knows that, but even if his body hasn't changed yet, he can still feel the energy clearly. Elsid tells him that's aura sense, and if he learns to focus that flow, he'll be able to read what's around him. MC lights up at that. To him, that sounds insanely cool. Elsid says he gets why he's excited, but first he needs to explain aura itself, starting with one fact. Every aura has an attribute. Most humans have one of 5 common types: metal, beast, wood, fire, or water. Leon's isn't any of those. Elsid says he's a little surprised the protagonist awakened the same aura type he has, which makes the protagonist even more curious. Shocked, MC asks if it's really the same as Elsid's, so that means… Elsid cuts him off and says yes. His aura has the sun attribute, which stands for light and heat. It's a rare, high-class attribute tied to brilliance. Leon flops onto the bed in excitement, thrilled that he shares the same attribute as the legendary hero. Before moving on, Elsid says he'll give the protagonist a quick summary. With a snap, he brings up the information terminal. It shows MC as a hero who has finally learned aura, now at level 22 with even more skills than before. He is stunned. The display looks completely different, and he can't believe he just learned aura yet is already level 3 with it. Elsid explains that Leon could already use Accelerate before fully learning aura, and he can use aura sense too. Since he'd already been doing that much, he was past levels 1 and 2 from the start. The protagonist asks if that's really possible, and Elsid says his martial body also reached level 2 once his meridians opened, so now it's time to teach him the swordsmanship he was missing. That makes MC genuinely happy. He can finally learn the sword style of Rodrigo Roderick Caldeus El Vivere. Eyes shining, he asks if they should begin right now, and Elsid laughs that Leon's really fired up. He says that's way better than having no drive at all, but he needs to know something first. This city is home to his enemies. The protagonist doesn't get it at first and asks what he means. Elsid says he can feel them somewhere in the city. The old enemies of the hero. Traitors trying to hand this world over to beings from another one. They lurk in the shadows of each era's hero like crawling bugs. A little tense, Leon asks what they're called. Elcid says he won't waste real names on trash like them. If MC needs a name, call them Malice, a wicked group. He clenches his fists, thinking about the hero's enemies, but Elcid warns that he's in no shape to fight them head-on yet. Leon comes to a conclusion and says then, all he has to do is grow stronger, right? He's already made up his mind. He's going to become a hero. Elcid stares at him for a moment. Then he explains that Malice will probably stay quiet for now, but they don't have forever. At most, they have 2 months to move. Hunting monsters is only training to get stronger. Malice is different. They're an enemy a hero can't avoid. From here on, the protagonist will have to crawl through mud, blood, and hatred. Hearing that, Leon turns tense. The next day at the Adventurers Guild, Karen tells MC the guards already contacted her, but she was worried since he hadn't shown up for 4 days. He asks if he made her wait, and she says something about him feels different. The protagonist brushes it off, saying he had a kind of breakthrough while hunting monsters. Karen gets excited, saying she knew it, and that gives her one more reason to congratulate him. Leon looks confused and asks, "Pardon?" Then he repeats, "One more reason?" Smiling, Karen hands him a new emblem and congratulates him on his promotion to C rank, Sir MC. He stares at the new emblem in his hand, then asks if C ranks usually skip the extra promotion test. Karen says that's right. Because of his high evaluations from the Ratman and Rocky Slime missions, and the letters of appreciation from the Lord and the Guard Captain, he didn't need one. Leon proudly looks at the emblem, amazed he ranked up after only 2 requests. Elcid says that's impressive, and with this promotion it'll be easier to take more jobs while searching for Malice. The protagonist says he'll start with C-rank requests, and Karen says he can begin right away as she shows him some papers. She quietly thinks that looking for another job right after a promotion really is on a whole different level. Elcid figures that's how she's reading it, and Holy Power really is pretty similar to Sun Aura anyway. Leon asks what Elcid thinks, and Elcid says a few look decent, but none seem connected to Malice, so MC asks if they should focus on training until they get a lead, while Karen watches him talk to himself. She offers to show him a different category, saying only choosing rejected jobs seems a little odd, but he cuts in and says that's not it. He thinks quietly for a moment, then asks her to show him any requests tied to the slums or jobs with a bad reputation. Karen stiffens and repeats, "The slums?" She explains that slums are usually just poor districts, but Blaine's are different. They're full of thieves, informants, escaped criminals, smugglers, assassins, and other lawbreakers. Leon thinks that if it's a huge lawless zone in a free city like this, then it makes sense. But Karen says there aren't any adventurer requests tied to the slums, because that kind of work goes to mercenaries, not adventurers. She says it nervously. The protagonist curses under his breath. Adventurers don't handle human disputes, and most trouble in the slums is exactly that. He realizes becoming a mercenary now would cause too many problems, and if he starts asking around without a reason, people will definitely watch him. A little later, Karen shows him one sheet and asks what he thinks of this request, Sir Leon. He takes it and reads it. A mission to subjugate ghost armors in an abandoned mansion. Decorative suits of armor left inside the empty mansion came to life, and now the place can't be sold. Karen says the reward is low, and not many D-rank adventurers can even destroy the armors. MC figures his sacred sword should handle them easily. Karen adds that the mansion is close to the slums, so it should help him get near the area. Leon realizes having a good excuse matters, and no matter how strong the slum factions are, they won't want trouble with the Adventurers Guild. If they provoke the guild, they could end up facing a high-rank adventurer. After all, rank A and above answer directly to the nation. Karen gives Leon a gentle smile and he scratches his head, a little embarrassed. He thanks her and promises to repay the favor next time, but Karen says it's fine. She's just doing her job. Then she reminds Sir Him to collect the reward for the Rocky Slimes too, including a generous bonus from the Guard Captain. The protagonist looks very pleased at the sack of coins. Then he suddenly remembers something and asks Karen if he can request one more favor. She says of course. More serious now, Leon asks where the Church of Blaine is. Karen looks startled by the question and, stammering, asks if he means the church. MC says yes, he has business there. Karen grows even more tense, and he thinks he expected that reaction. If she really believes he's a holy knight like Elcid said, then even holy knights doing penance aren't supposed to ask the church for help. The only exception is when enemies of the church appear, heretics who reject the goddess. In that case, the church gathers all its strength, which is why the brutal Iron Knights are sent out. At last, Karen tells him it's in the Northeast District, the 13th building at the end. Leon thanks her and says he's on his way. Karen just stands there staring, almost drooling, before realizing that if a sacred knight is headed to the church, then an enemy of the church must have appeared. She drops flat to the floor and thinks the guild can't ignore this. They need to report it right away. Elcid gives a satisfied look and calls it a clever move. Leon says it's the best option if he wants to hide who he is. A D or C rank report alone won't push the guild to move. But then he pauses and says, that's not fully true. Once the report is filed, the guild will start acting on its own anyway. So maybe he already did expose himself a little. If things get desperate, he could bring Elsid to the church as proof, but he wants to save that for last. Elsid's seal still isn't fully undone, and the protagonist knows he needs more skill before he can stand before the church and claim he wields the sacred sword. Putting that aside, he asks about the living armors. Are they really just empty suits of armor that move on their own? Elsid sounds a little surprised and says no, which catches Leon off guard too. He explains that living armor is a rare natural case. Armor can move through magic, sorcery, or power placed into it by someone. It has no will of its own, just metal carrying orders to attack intruders. MC wonders if a mage could end it all with a dispel spell. Elsid says no. They weren't made by normal magic, so dispelling won't help. It's like pulling out support beams from a house. The rubble still stays there. So mages are basically useless here, Leon realizes. Even so, he figures the enemies they're facing shouldn't be too serious. Looking over the paper, he notes that the armor is made from an iron mix coated with silver. Elsid then asks why they still haven't been beaten if they're supposed to be easy. He adds that if this had been given as a punishment mission, it would have been cleared out already, which makes him uneasy. Then the protagonist notices something else in the report. He asks if the armor's regeneration speed is unusually fast. The document says that even after every piece is smashed, the armor comes back together in less than 10 minutes. Because of that, people's weapons wear out first, so they retreat. Elsid says he gets it now. That's the kind of durability an iron alloy living armor can have. Leon rolls up the paper and says they'll know for sure once they arrive. Let's go. By nightfall, they reach the slum district. MC is stunned. The place is way more crowded than he expected. He calls out to Elsid, who says he's felt something unpleasant ever since they entered, almost like someone might be watching. Still, Elsid says if they were truly being followed, he would have noticed at once. He does have an idea what this feeling is. Curious, Leon asks what he means. Elsid says it's because of his aura sense. Sun aura reacts strongly to outside influence. People see the protagonist's age and think he looks easy to rob, so their bad intentions are brushing against his aura. MC recoils and says that somehow makes the feeling even worse. He can't believe that stabbing sensation is just people wanting to hurt him. Elsid warns him to stay alert anyway. Most hostile thoughts won't matter, but some can be truly dangerous. Leon says he understands. Elsid reminds him that strangers always need caution, no matter where they are, and says he should be careful on this job. A little uneasy now, he keeps moving forward. Night deepens as he finally reaches the mansion. The protagonist says the place has clearly been abandoned for a long time. Elsid jokes it wouldn't sell even without the armors, and the protagonist agrees. Nearby, several armors sit under thin cloths, and at that moment, they begin to wake. MC heads deeper into the mansion and reaches a large room thick with webs. He draws the sacred sword and says he's ready. Then he steps ahead, using the blade's magic as a light. Grinning, he says this thing is seriously useful, and Elsid tells him to bring candles next time. He can't just glow like this when other people are around. Leon happily agrees. Next time, sure. Then Elsid points ahead. At the far end of the corridor, an armed suit of armor starts coming toward them. Its eyes shine with strange power. It swings its weapon, cracking the floor as it locks onto Leon. Excited, he says it's his first time fighting someone with a halberd, a weapon that can slash, stab, pierce, and even crush. And on top of that, it has a reach of around 2 meters. That means the weapon alone covers the distance the protagonist would need 2 steps to close. The armor attacks first. Leon blocks and thinks that range only matters if there's someone skilled enough to use it. With a sharp strike, he knocks the weapon aside. No matter how deadly a halberd is, there's no way an empty suit of armor weighing 20 or 30 kilos can overpower him with it. He says that's what it gets for letting him come in close. His next blow starts tearing the armor apart, but Leon quickly sees it still isn't enough. So he follows up with a rapid chain of strikes. The armor breaks apart, its pieces scattering across the floor. Elsid asks if he used acceleration, then says that aside from a few small misses caused by the speed boost, it wasn't bad. Leon says he can only keep it up for a few seconds. Mount LaFour can already use it far more smoothly. Still, the report claimed these things regenerate even after being smashed with a warhammer. MC watches the broken armor on the ground and says this doesn't look like abnormal regeneration at all. Elsid suggests the report might have been fake. He admits that's possible, but filing a false report is a Class 2 crime in the guild. If someone dies because of it, the guild will even put a bounty on the person responsible. That's what bothers him. Who would risk that just to dodge a punishment mission? The more he thinks about it, the stranger this whole case feels. No matter how tough these armors are, Gru should have been able to handle them. Elcid says he has no answer and wonders if each one might be different. Leon says that's possible. He decides to be more careful, but Elcid says that may not matter because they've already come to him. The protagonist looks down the corridor and sees several glowing eyes. A whole group of animated armors starts marching his way. Squinting at them, Leon says he can't see clearly and asks if Elcid can turn up the brightness. Elcid mutters that he's not sure whether he's a sacred sword or a torch anymore, but he makes the blade shine much brighter. Holy light floods the entire room. MC thinks it's incredible, bright enough to fill the space, yet soft on his eyes. Then screaming suddenly comes from ahead, and the armors start yelling and covering their eyes. Completely confused, Leon asks what the hell is wrong with them. Smoke pours from the armor's eyes, and then they rush him all at once. He reacts fast and counters their attacks. He thinks these things are ganging up on him. Their attacks are easy to read, but their movements are strangely perfect. Still, there's something off about it. This would only really be dangerous if they were actual knights. He scoffs, wondering how long they think those same repeated moves will work on him. Then Elcid calls out to him, and Leon suddenly realizes something is wrong. That brief distraction nearly gets his head split open, but he ducks in time. He leaps back to open some distance and asks, annoyed, what it is. Elcid says those aren't living armors at all, and Leon snaps back. Then what are they? Elcid tells him to use his special sight. If he looks properly, he'll understand. The protagonist activates his vision and sees that something is inside the armor. He asks why there's smoke, and Elcid explains that the black smoke is a kind of evil force. The second it touches MC's body, it will start draining his life. His solar aura can resist it, but touching it still won't end well. Leon asks if that's why they reacted so badly to the sacred sword's light, and Elcid says partly, if they were only made of evil energy, the light would have purified them already. And normal living armors have no mind. They can't scream. There's no reason they should fear holy light like that. Only certain beings react this way to purification, and Elcid reveals what they are, evil spirits. He explains that these are phantom armors, born when restless spirits possess armor and let their bitterness turn into hatred for the living. Leon remembers the one he fought first, and realizes that's why it didn't regenerate. Armor taken over by evil spirits can't be truly destroyed until that hatred burns out. No matter how much damage you do, it keeps rising again. The only ways to defeat phantom armors are powerful magic to drive the spirit out, cutting the bond, or purifying them with holy power. He is glad he has the sacred sword, the strongest holy weapon. But there's still a problem. There are just too many. If these are phantom armors, it's smarter to pull back now and come again during the day. Elcid says the number itself is the real problem. There's no way this many appeared by chance. Leon asks if that means someone caused it. Elcid explains that even with good conditions, creating phantom armor almost never succeeds. Mansion. The protagonist is shocked. That can't be right. There's no way that many people are dying in this city. Elcid explains that evil spirits usually aren't very active. They can't travel far, can't stay in this world very long, and usually can't even cross to another district in the same city. Leon immediately says that leaves only one place, the slums. It's the one area beyond the law, where anything can be bought with money or taken by force. MC hardens his resolve. He can't ignore this, but as he is now, he knows he still doesn't have the experience to deal with it alone. Even using the sacred sword to force the church to move is pointless unless he first learns what this secret group wants and who they are. So he throws out the idea of coming back in the morning and charges ahead. He figures fighting stronger enemies in the dark will help him grow. Leon keeps cutting through the cursed armors. Before long, he smashed a whole pile of them without much trouble. By then, morning is starting to break. Elcid says it looks like they're finally done. Leon agrees as sunlight begins to spill inside. He admits fighting while surrounded wasn't as bad as he expected. Elcid asks if that's because of his blind spots, and the protagonist says yes, his awareness is almost unfair. Still, his vision has limits. No matter how sharp he is, he can't see behind himself, and he can't always fight with his back against a wall. Elcid agrees completely. Then he says a third-rate fighter is ruled by conditions, a second-rate one adjusts to them, and a first-rate fighter turns them into an advantage. Leon takes a deep breath, pleased. As he leaves the mansion, he says this is something he has to overcome if he's going to fight for the slums. The slums are far more dangerous than those traps, and the snares there are set with real cruelty. MC knows people used to murder, and ambushes will go straight for his blind spots. If he keeps depending only on his vision, he could fall into a trap he can't escape. Elsewhere in the city, a child is crying. Something has clearly upset the little boy. A cloaked man walks up to him. As the boy wipes his tears and looks up, he suddenly covers his mouth in fear. A huge, rough-looking man has appeared nearby. Everyone around them goes stiff the moment he shows up. As he passes with his men behind him, someone whispers that it's Khan, the head of the strongest gang in Blaine. One subordinate reports they watched Districts 23 and 25 like ordered, but no slave who entered ever came back. He adds that the area around the mansion felt too dangerous, so they didn't move in any closer, and asks if they should dig deeper. Khan says no, watch from afar. Getting close already drew too much attention. Then, seated on his throne-like chair, he calls for the next report. Another man says they checked the leaking water in Districts 23 and 25. Mixed in with the filth, they found human remains, enough to guess at least 30 people were killed that day. Khan asks what the mage thought. The reply, something about it was strange, and not even black magic should be able to do that. That finally makes Khan look uneasy. He orders them to gather everything they inspected and write it up with proof so the church and guild have no choice but to move. One man protests. If this gets solved now, their cut from the slave traders will drop by half. Suddenly, red liquid splashes across another man's face. The one complaining drops dead on the spot. Khan coldly says a man dies the moment he forgets when to stop, just like that idiot. The henchman is stunned by Khan's skill. He didn't even see the attack. It looked like a simple flick of the arm. Khan warns that those people are different. You can't control them, and you shouldn't even try. Just being tied to them brings trouble. Whether they're madmen, cultists, or spies from another kingdom, there's no reason to get involved. He says if the church acts directly, it's over for them. Anyone who trades even a single coin with that group will be hunted to the ends of the earth. That group is the church's execution force, the Holy Knights of the Iron Chain. Khan tells them to move on and asks for the next report. A man says he has one. It's about the abandoned mansion in that district. He's heard an adventurer has been going there often because of a request. Khan shows interest, and the man says it's been going on for more than a week. He goes on to say that the adventurer recently got a nickname from jobs involving ratmen and stone slimes. At first it was Cat, but now people call him Janitor. One henchman says it's probably because he keeps taking the jobs everyone else refuses. Khan laughs and says that kind of adventurer might actually be useful. Night falls over the busy city. Back at the inn, Leon isn't resting at all. He's fully focused on training, and by the time he finishes, he looks drained. Elsid asks how it went. Did he feel the aura moving through his body? Leon says yes, and that it felt almost unreal. Elsid praises him, saying a steady normal man beats a lazy genius. The protagonist says every trial feels like dying and coming back, and instead of feeling stronger, he mostly feels relieved. Elsid tells him to check for himself, then snaps his fingers and opens the terminal again. MC is confused why his aura user level is already low rank when it used to be beginner, even though only his sword mastery reached intermediate. Elsid says that's just how fast he is growing, and it makes sense with him as the teacher. The protagonist is learning in days what takes others hundreds, but the protagonist points out that the 7-star sword still isn't there. Annoyed, Elsid says Leon can't claim he's learned that style when he doesn't even grasp the first form yet. He explains that the 7-star sword, also called Chariot, is the secret sword art created by Rodrigo Roderick Caldeas El Vivere. A true master is someone who can chain all 7 forms together. MC says he wants to learn even one form before facing Malice, and asks if using both swords together wouldn't give him a huge edge. Elsid answers that if he tried that below master rank, he'd die. He cuts him off. He says 2 months isn't enough to become strong enough to crush everyone in the slums, so he needs a trump card. And an aura weapon means nothing if you can't use it right. Elsid quietly weighs his words. Leon says to start right now and that he'll train until he hits his limit. Elsid says he likes the spirit, but today's lesson is over. The protagonist, disappointed, asks why. Elsid says they have unwanted guests and looks out the window. MC goes over too, and Elsid adds that they're definitely not guests staying at the inn. Leon asks if they came for him. Elsid says he doesn't sense monsters, malice, or anyone especially skilled, but they sure look like thugs. He wonders if they're from the slums. Elsid says they don't seem friendly, but he doesn't think they came to fight. The protagonist decides to meet them and heads outside. In front of the inn, one of them rudely asks if he's the janitor. MC says he is. Another apologizes for showing up without warning, saying they're acting under orders and asking for his understanding. He asks, orders from who? The bandaged man answers that they're from a gang called Bastard. Leon watches the group strike poses like some goofy boy band. He remembers hearing about them while gathering info. They're led by Khan the Fang, one of the top figures among the 3 powers that split up the slums. Pointing at the protagonist, a thug says the boss wants to see him, though they were told to leave him alone if he refuses. Still, he suggests MC come quietly. Without hesitation, MC tells them to lead the way. The goons are surprised he agreed so easily, while he figures Khan wouldn't invite him like this if he planned to kill him. And if he can use Khan's name, most people will move aside, making this a perfect chance to reach deeper into the slums. Elsid appears and says it's obvious what the protagonist is thinking. The protagonist confirms it. The night is clear, and as he follows the gang, MC thinks Khan probably wants to offer him work the guild could never post openly. If Khan plans to use him, Leon decides he'll use Khan too. Once inside a building, one of the men points ahead and tells him to keep going. Then someone suddenly rushes past and slams into a thug. The man hits the ground, and apples scatter everywhere. The person stammers out an apology. The thug glares at him and snarls, then starts kicking him, cursing and demanding to know why he wasn't watching where he was going. Leon is clearly bothered by it, but Elsid tells him to hold back. Outraged, he asks what he means. Elsid warns him to control his feelings. If Khan sees hatred on his face now, the protagonist will ruin everything. MC gets it and forces himself to calm down. A moment later, he says he's fine and promises to be more careful. That night, when they reach the meeting place, Leon says this must be the bastard's base. Elsid dryly comments that at least they know the meaning of cleanliness. He studies the place and wonders if those marks are from fights. He says it almost looks like they leave it dirty on purpose, and Elsid says that's a classic show of power. Then a giant man appears behind the protagonist and asks if he's the one they call the janitor. Leon reacts on instinct and draws his weapon at once. He spins and strikes, but the man blocks it with his wrist. Grinning wickedly as he holds MC's blade in place, he says, "Janitor is a terrible nickname for him." He is shaken by the man's presence. The giant then readies a counterattack. Leon can only stare, stunned, thinking he's about to die as the man brings down a crushing blow. But the punch stops right in front of the protagonist's face. Even without landing, the force of it cuts MC's face. As the dust starts to clear, Leon realizes he never could have dodged that. The shockwave alone was that strong. If the hit had connected, his head would have burst. He wonders if this is what real prey feels like, and the man says he's got nerve. He expected nothing from a rank C piece of trash. Then he lightly taps his chest and says, "You're the one I pick." The protagonist wipes his nose and asks what exactly he was picked for. Khan says it's for the job he came to offer. Wasn't that obvious when MC followed them here? He adds that he'll give him what he wants, and he asks what that is supposed to mean. With a grin, Khan says he's already looked into him. At the Royal Academy, the protagonist was always second among the commoner students, and by pure hard work, he beat plenty of spoiled nobles. After leaving school, he joined the Adventurers Guild and quickly got noticed by important rank C adventurers. MC listens, thinking this really is the slum's top predator. Khan must have eyes all over the alleys. Khan proudly says he can kind of see why Leon left the academy. In his view, he never wanted to become a knight because he had no plan to kneel to nobles. Both Elsid and the protagonist are caught off guard by that idea. Khan goes on, saying MC beat noble brats senseless, then became an adventurer instead of one of those greedy fools chasing money. He claims he saw the bigger game and chose a path where the powerful could still make use of him. That's why, according to Khan, Leon reached rank C after just 2 jobs. The protagonist flashes back to the Ratmen fight, then the slimes, and finally getting his emblem, while Khan asks if that isn't the truth. MC and Elsie just listen in stunned silence, while he thinks Khan has it completely wrong. Khan says if he cared about money, he never would have done any of that. So from the start, he knew there had to be one real goal. Now fired up, he declares that goal is fame, the one thing nobles can't control, the thing that raises your place no matter where you're from. He's sure that's why Leon answered his summons without hesitation. Even though the slums are dangerous, the protagonist still came. Khan asks if that proves it, then says if the protagonist accepts this job, that dream will come true. More serious now, MC says he understands, while thinking this guy is insane and making up his own story. Elsid calls it wild nonsense, but admits it fits Leon's past and the jobs he took. To anyone else, it really would look like he's after fame. He thinks this misunderstanding is different from Rodrigo's, but there's no reason to fix it. Khan could become an enemy later, so if he's this wrong, the protagonist might as well use it. He says he'll at least hear him out. Khan stares at him with a heavy, threatening look. Then the meeting goes on. Khan explains that people in the slums are wary of outsiders, but they don't shut them out completely. This place runs on survival of the fittest, so troublemakers trying to grab power show up all the time. That's why he ignored the new group's moves for the first 4 months. That changed when they took over districts 23 and 25 and left about 200 bodies in one day. Leon remembers the cursed armor and wonders if malice is tied to the abandoned mansion and those suits of armor. Khan keeps going, saying the slums are divided among 3 rulers. One is Simon, the loan shark called the Golden Pig. Another is a mysterious killer, the Keeper of the Coffin, whose face no one has ever seen. And then there's Khan himself, sitting above them all. Leon thinks maybe it's because Khan's the first one he met, but those nicknames make the others sound hard to picture. Khan says districts 23 and 25 belong to Simon, but after nearly 200 deaths and all the unpaid money tied to them, Simon lost it. So he hired mercenaries from rank D all the way to B, and every one of them got slaughtered. That leaves MC stunned. He asks who these people even are, and Khan says he has no idea. Leon realizes they must be incredibly strong to wipe out that many mercenaries. This is the kind of threat the Empire should already be watching, and if Khan's telling the truth, then the huge number of phantom armors in that mansion makes perfect sense. Khan says everyone who tried to learn more ended up dead, except him. He curses Simon for being too scared to act and says the coffin keeper is probably just watching, while his own men avoid starting a full war. He adds that they'd complain if he hadn't gone out there himself, and he gets why, but he sums it up. The whole thing turned into a non-aggression standoff. Khan says that's exactly it. Frustrating as it is, that's why he called for him, the adventurer chasing fame. After testing him, Khan became sure of it. The protagonist runs toward danger, not away from it, so he figured he wouldn't refuse. MC says it sounds like Khan wants him to work as a hired killer, betray the guild, and let Khan use him. Khan, pleased, says he's sharp. He says it'd be nice to have someone like him instead of a bunch of idiots, but Leon flatly answers that he hates gangs. To him, Khan just wants outside muscle, so he won't lose power to these dangerous enemies. The protagonist also realizes malice is the bigger problem now, but Khan himself could become an even worse one later. So MC says fine, but asks how Khan plans to make the guild move. Khan answers by showing him some documents. He starts reading them and is immediately startled. The more he looks, the worse it gets. The papers are packed with proof that people in the slums are being offered up to malice. Even Elsid is shocked. He says it could already be in the hundreds. Or, at worst, the thousands. A sick feeling hits Leon. In a place with no walls and no control, no one really knows what's going on. Elsid notices his reaction and speaks up. Says no. The guild leaders are even more stubborn than MC thinks. They'd never trust evidence from someone as shady as him. Leon says that's why Khan needs him. Khan agrees. He says he will become proof the guild can't ignore. Living proof. The protagonist says that's unbelievably shameless, because whether he comes back alive with a report or dies and becomes evidence, Khan still wins. Khan bursts out laughing and asks, "So, are you in?" MC calls him a shameless bastard, pointing out again that alive or dead, he's useful either way. Khan presses him for an answer. Slamming the table, he says yes. Khan says information is hard to gather in the slums, and taking this job could still save hundreds of lives. Then he tosses 2 items onto the table and tells Leon to take them. When the protagonist asks what they are, Khan says one is a dagger carrying his seal. Show it to anyone looking for trouble, and no one will touch him, except the coffin keeper. MC says the thing creeps him out and gives it back, which makes Khan curse at him. Then Khan explains the bag holds magic scrolls, either to use in a pinch or sell if Leon wants. He tells him to treat it as an advance. He is about to ask something else, when a memory flashes through his mind. That earlier punch Khan stopped at the last second. The protagonist asks if he meant to pull it from the start. Khan thinks about that in silence, then smiles and says yes. Later that night, back at the inn, Leon sits in his room, lost in thought. Khan is the reason he's still so shaken. MC keeps thinking about how absurdly strong Khan the Fang is. It makes one thing clear, he still has to train a lot more. Leon asks Elsid if anything in the documents stood out, and Elsid says yes, but he needs to study it more first. If they're dealing with malice, one wrong move could end in disaster. He asks if that means Elsid needs to see it in person, and the sword agrees. Then he thinks about the mission ahead. Sneaking into a place that already crushed 500 mercenaries won't be easy. He tells Elsid he'll need help, someone who can't be bought and who'll protect him without hesitation. Concerned, Elsid asks if that's asking too much. The protagonist ignores that and adds one more condition. The person has to truly hate malice. Elsid says there's only one place to find someone like that, and the protagonist asks if he means the 30th building in Prima District. The next day, MC and Elsid arrive in front of a building, and MC asks if this is the Holy Church. He wonders why a branch would be set up in such a poor area, and Elsid says the church always sends clerics to places where forgotten people live. He explains that greedy people can be tempted, and those hungry for ambition can be controlled, but clerics are different. They follow their faith and the goddess's teachings, so they don't stray. In short, they won't be moved by his lies. Leon realizes he has no real choice. Even if he doesn't want attention as an inexperienced hero, he'll have to tell the truth. The protagonist figures that if he reveals who he is, a cleric will keep it secret if he asks. He also notices the people here may dress poorly, but they look hopeful and don't even steal from each other. That makes him think the church branch must have earned their trust. He starts wondering what kind of bishop runs this place. When he reaches the door, he knocks. A voice asks who's there, and MC says he's an adventurer with something important for the bishop. Right away, a strange feeling runs through him. His aura starts to change. It's reacting to the aura of whoever is behind the door. The person who opens it has pointed ears. He introduces himself as the bishop of this branch, Tisere. Leon and Elsid are both caught off guard. The bishop is an elf. His hands are bruised and he's calmly drinking something warm. With a smile, Tisere says he must be surprised to see an elf as bishop, and he doesn't answer right away. Tisere admits it's unusual, but says the goddess loves every race the same, and he serves her with all his heart. Then Leon gets another surprise. Tisere already knows about him from what he's done before. Because of the protagonist's work, the water got cleaner, and far fewer people suffered stomach pain. Tisere says the goddess must be pleased. MC, a little awkwardly, says he's honored. His tone turns serious, and the bishop reminds him he said he had something to share. He steels himself. Before saying anything else, he asks Tisere to read the documents first. The bishop takes them and looks through them carefully. His gentle expression disappears, replaced by anger. Tisere says this is serious enough that the church itself needs to step in, which gives Leon hope. But the bishop warns that the source will seem suspicious, so the central church will probably send someone they trust to confirm it. That would take too long, and the protagonist agrees. So he asks if Tisere knows anyone who can go with him to investigate Districts 23 and 25. Tisere apologizes and says no one at this branch can fight. Some of them know healing and support arts, but he doubts they'd help much on a mission like this. Leon feels his last option slipping away. Then Tisere, anger rising again, says if that's how it is, he'll go himself. MC and Elsid are both stunned by that answer. Tisere insists he can't leave something like this to others. Just because he's a bishop doesn't mean he's above getting his hands dirty. Leon had expected a recommendation, not the bishop himself, so he asks if that's really okay. The elf looks almost offended. He asks him if he seems that unreliable. Seeing all the scars on him, the protagonist starts to reconsider. Then Tisere stretches out an arm. Red aura gathers in his hand. It's fire aura, packed so tightly that it spills out and burns the air around it. The technique is strong enough to rip through mithril-like paper. Elsid says the speed of that control means Tisere mastered it through countless battles, probably on Khan's level. Leon realizes there's a reason he's a bishop. Tisere asks what he thinks and says he won't hold him back. MC awkwardly admits that if anyone slows the other down, it'll probably be him. Smiling, Tisere tells him not to flatter him so much. He explains that 50 years ago, he served in the Iron Chain Holy Knights, but now he's only a retired soldier. He immediately recognizes the name and wonders if Tisere once belonged to the strongest force on the continent. Excited now, Leon says he'll be in Tisere's care, but the elf says he should be the one saying that. Tisere asks for a moment so he can get his weapon, telling the protagonist to wait in the front garden. MC can hardly believe it. He's teaming up with someone from the Iron Chain Holy Knights. He even starts imagining some elegant old knight weapon, maybe a bow that suits an elf. Elsid calls him naive and asks if he didn't notice the calluses on Tisere's hands. He just looks confused. Then, out of nowhere, a spiked iron ball slams into the ground. Tisere appears, smiling, holding a flail. Leon and Elsid are both taken aback. After a short pause in the garden, Tisere decides to show what it can do. He swings the flail wide and lets it fly. The strike smashes straight through nearby rocks, breaking them apart. Still smiling, he says it feels good. It's been a long time. He adds that he'll never forget crushing heretics' skulls with this weapon. That leaves Leon and Elsid even more unsettled. Tisere goes on, saying this fight will destroy evil, and maybe help wash away his own sins too. He's sure the goddess will watch over their holy battle, and asks the protagonist what he thinks. MC awkwardly mutters that she's probably watching, and Tisere answers with complete confidence that she is. Later that afternoon, he moves through the slum streets. He asks Elsid if the bishop is still following them properly, and Elsid says yes. Leon says they had Tisere change clothes, since a cleric can't walk into a criminal hideout dressed like one. Still, something feels off. The protagonist can sense him through aura, but none of his normal senses can pick him up. Elsid explains it's an aura technique that wipes out your presence. It's hard to keep up while moving, but Tisere is extremely skilled with it. A drunken-looking man suddenly bumps into where the elf should be. He starts yelling, then another guy looks over and wonders who he's talking to, because no one seems to be there. Elsid says Tisere must have a lot of experience with infiltration. MC agrees. He's basically invisible, even if MC can still feel him through aura. Elsid explains he normally shouldn't detect him at all, but aura rules can change depending on a person's attribute. From Tisere's reaction, Elsid guesses the elf has the moon attribute. The protagonist's is sun. That would explain why MC can still sense him. Sun makes stealth like this less effective against him. Leon wonders if sun and moon is just chance, or something more. A while later, he says they've reached District 23. Elsid notes that the gang's dagger really helped, and the protagonist agrees. He remembers how the rough men along the way kept staring at them. The moment he showed the dagger, every gang member stepped aside without a word. Tessere says he can't believe they crossed the slums that easily, and adds that Leon is just as impressive as he'd heard. He says that thanks to MC, he can now judge those shameless heretics who trample life without gratitude for the goddess's grace. That kind of talk makes him and Elcid a little uneasy. Pushing ahead, the protagonist says that from here on, they're inside Malice territory. The surface is too dangerous, so they'll use the sewer route Khan told him about. They head down, with Tessere using magic to light the way. Then he suddenly puts the light out and signals Leon to stay quiet. From a nearby passage, they hear someone say they only finished for today because the sacrifices started resisting. He complains that 70 people a day is too much. Even throwing bodies away non-stop, they can only finish once the ritual is done at night. Then they grumble that those bastards always leave the cleanup to them. Leon is horrified. A ritual, 70 people in one day. They've been killing that many every day for a month. As his anger rises, he sees Tessere draw his weapon and say he'll go first. The bishop leaps up, breaks through the floor, and lands behind the men. In the same instant, his flail is already in one man's face. With clean, practiced moves, he drops both of them almost instantly. Leon climbs up after him, a little flustered, and Tessere coolly says they were supposed to be infiltrating. Another man appears ahead, wearing a threatening mask and releasing smoke. Tessere rushes him before he can act, but something catches the bishop off guard. His weapon stops short, blocked by a magic barrier. The masked man laughs and says attacks won't work on his outer armor. He angrily demands how they dared sneak in, then says their timing is perfect since they were running low on sacrifices. A second later, he's cut in half. Leon took him down with one sharp strike. Staring at MC, another man starts panicking, asking who he is and whether he knows who they're dealing with. Then Tessere appears behind him and grabs him by the head. Together, the two quickly wipe out the remaining cultists. Afterward, they look down at the bodies. Satisfied, Tessere says brother, he already handled the men. He awkwardly asks him not to say things like that so loudly. The protagonist notes that those cultists were carrying high-quality blades, and Tessere says he picked one up, so that's probably why the protagonist could get through their heretical defense. MC quietly checks with Elcid to see if everything is fine. Elcid says yes, everything is going as planned. He also put a special spell on himself, so to everyone else, he looks like an ordinary sword like the others they took. He thinks that's a relief, because the sacred sword would stand out way too much otherwise. Still, someone deeply familiar with the church or Rodrigo might realize it's a sacred sword anyway. Leon knows this can hardly be called a clean infiltration, but now they've uncovered the enemy's true nature, and they even heard proof with their own ears. The elf agrees, but says it's only infiltration if they actually pull it off. Otherwise, if no one survives to talk, it's basically an assassination. Kill them all, and you can call it infiltration if you want. Elcid and the protagonist smile at that, but both are still uneasy. MC says they should keep searching, and Caesar agrees with brother MC. Then they push open a heavy metal door. Inside is a horrible sight. Corpses, tools, and piles of human bones. He covers his mouth. To him, it looks like a nightmare. He can only wonder how many people died there and how much pain they went through. Elcid tells him to endure it. He says Leon probably hasn't seen something this awful before, but he can't look away. A hero has to remember this. The sword says this tragedy is the enemy's true form, the one the protagonist chose to fight. MC asks if their enemy isn't the Demon King, and Elcid says a mere Demon King isn't enough to define it. The world is not so simple that beating one villain can save it, and that leaves Leon stunned. Elcid says poverty is a sickness to the poor, and the Demon King is a sickness to the weak. Then he asks if there's any simple logic behind disasters like this. Can a sacred sword slash poverty? Can it wipe out disease? Compared to that, the Demon King is only one thing he can cut. A true hero is someone who creates a better tomorrow. So he has to keep going to the end. No matter how ugly the truth is, he can't turn away. Only by facing tragedy can he strike at evil's root. At last, the protagonist manages to steady his breathing. Looking ahead, he wonders what he was even thinking before. Anyone who could recover this fast after seeing all this must have incredible willpower, he thinks. Leon calls to His Excellency, and the elf says this is likely the real facility. Everything before this was just for dumping bodies. From here on, they're probably facing at least dozens of enemies, so rushing in blindly would be dangerous. He recalls Khan telling him to treat it like an advance payment and use it however he wanted. MC didn't want to rely on it, but now he has no choice. He pulls a scroll from his pouch and opens it. Caesar asks Brother Leon what kind of scroll it is. He focuses while holding it, then activates a clairvoyance spell. Elcid explains that the magic lets the caster see beyond normal limits, and he even helped sharpen the protagonist's vision. Right away, Leon starts seeing through the walls and floors of the whole place. Then the scroll falls, and he suddenly looks hurt. He grabs his face as the elf rushes over, but MC says he's okay. It's nothing. He says the facility doesn't seem that big. maybe 24 people total, and he gives a rough idea of where they all are. But in the center is one room he still can't see into, though he knows the entrance is on the east side. Leon says that room might be the key. The elf says maybe, or maybe it's bait. A common trick is to lead intruders exactly where you want them. Sometimes the place that looks weakest is actually the most protected. He says it could just be an empty chamber where they dump remains, while the real operation is in District 2. That makes Leon tense. He says he's probably right, but he doesn't want to move unless they're sure. Security won't be any lighter if they come back later, so today is still their best chance. Now that they've found the likely target, Caesar asks if they should take everyone out as fast and quietly as possible. Nearby, two men are talking when chains suddenly wrap around them both, and the cultists are killed in an instant. Farther down the hall, another man gets caught in the elf's chains. He says that makes 12. Excited, the elf says his body is finally warming up. Then he jokes that he's gotten too old to fight as recklessly as before. Caesar asks if this is the wall the protagonist couldn't see through, and the protagonist says yes. Now he just has to figure out how to open it. He rams it with his shoulder, but there's no handle, and it won't move when he pushes or pulls. Strange letters cover it, glowing red like an open wound. Spinning his weapon, the elf asks Brother Leon to step back for a moment. Then he strikes the wall, and nothing happens. MC is stunned. The attack actually bounced off. Even the elf looks surprised. He remembers him smashing stone back at the church. That weapon could turn rock to dust. He also remembers how easily they cut down the cultists. So how did an attack like that fail to leave even a mark on this wall? Elcid says it's made of something irregular. A door built from extra-dimensional material, based on rules that don't exist in this world. As far as he remembers, it freezes from heat and burns from cold. More than that, it rejects outside interference. Leon realizes that explains why the scroll couldn't see through it either. If force and magic both fail, then only one option is left. Suddenly, the elf starts praying. He asks his god to place the light of correction in his hand. The protagonist asks if this is sacred art, and Elcid says yes. It's a power you can't train like aura or study like magic. It comes from faith, virtue, and the natural laws of this world. The sword explains that heretical arts can't surpass sacred arts. As the elf finishes praying and presses his hand to the wall, cracks spread across it. Leon cheers. The door is finally breaking, but then it suddenly stops. The bishop pushes harder, his hand glowing again as he forces more power into it. MC asks if sacred arts weren't supposed to be stronger than heretical ones, and Elcid says that's true. If this door can resist a bishop's sacred art, then it's tougher than expected. That means it's probably guarding something important, not just a trap. He says he will need to finish it, and he'll support him. He agrees. As the protagonist gathers his aura, Caesar watches in confusion and calls out, "Brother, the protagonist!" Then MC shouts and rushes the door, bringing down a powerful strike. A blade of energy tears through it, and the door breaks apart into pieces. Startled, he asks if it vanished. Elcid says that means it was never meant to exist in this world. Caesar praises the attack and admits he underestimated Brother Him. Embarrassed, the protagonist says that's too much credit. His Excellency did most of the work. The bishop says he doesn't sense anything beyond the door. It seems empty, except when they use it for rituals. MC can barely see inside, but the smell of blood is strong. The elf then uses, and what appears shocks him just as much as it shocks Leon. In the dark, they find some kind of living mass. He stammers, asking what that thing is, then loses his composure and demands to know what the hell it is. Even the elf struggles to stay calm. Inside is a shapeless lump of flesh covered in eyes and mouths. Part of it crawls along the floor, making a sickening sound. Tears in his eyes. Leon says they're all still alive. Elcid says he gets it now. They cut the flesh and drain the blood of intelligent beings, turning them into chunks of living meat filled with life force. And judging by how much is here, the goal is obvious. A heretical art meant to summon a monster using a huge number of sacrifices as bait. Because it can swallow an entire city in one bite, this disaster was called the protagonist's suffering. Leon asks, "Called what?" Then Elcid says it's the devourer of cities. He explains that it takes enormous time and effort to prepare, but once it begins, it can't be stopped. It's an extra-dimensional being that even a transcendent wouldn't want to face. It appears, eats a city in one bite, and returns to its own dimension. MC thinks of the free city of Blaine, but if this one works, it'll be a disaster. Terrified, Leon asks if it's ever happened before, and the sword says there wouldn't be records unless it had. He explains that with heretical arts, no one knows what will happen until they're activated, so the church can only make countermeasures afterward. Horrified, he asks what the countermeasure is for the devourer of cities. They can't fight something like that without a plan, can they? Elcid goes quiet, clearly thinking hard, while the protagonist calls to him. He says this facility is only a processing site for sacrifices, but even so, it still isn't enough. Security is way too loose too. Leon asks if they've already gathered enough. The sword says yes, at least 90%. Now all that's left is to begin the ritual. He explains they'll start as soon as the citizens are evacuated, leaving MC shocked. Elcid says they need a direct approach. He asks, direct? The sword says they need to gather all the city's forces and take District 25 by force. A ritual this large needs a huge setup, so if they crush the enemy first, it should end there. Leon says that means all-out war, and his companion confirms it. Once cornered, the cultist will cling to their final option. He explains that the scary part of heretical arts is how well they defend. They're tied to another dimension and shut out all non-sacred power. Then he adds there's one more thing the protagonist has, the all-powerful sacred sword. Elcid says they'll wear the cult down with all-out war, then finish them off fast. If they still don't know about the sacred sword, they'll be trapped with no way out. Leon says that sounds better, but if they aren't stupid, they'll notice they've been exposed and set up an ambush. Fired up, he says they'll just have to take that risk. The elf looks at him and calls out, "Brother MC." He warns that they need to leave now. The enemy has probably realized someone's inside. Leon crouches, picks up a piece of that creature and answers, then wonders what it means to still be alive in a state like this as he slips it into a pouch. The elf readies his weapon, letting the flail's chain extend, then rushes the giant creature with it. He smashes into the monster again and again, tearing it apart while he stays calm in the middle of the chaos. After that, the two run for the exit. Stizzer tells the protagonist to move, and the protagonist agrees. Several cultists spot them escaping, while another panics over the sacrifices they spent so long preparing being ruined. Someone orders them to stop the chase and seal the whole place now that it's been discovered. Soon, night greets them outside. Exhausted, Leon says it looks like the cult stopped chasing them, and Stizzer says their presence is fading. The elf says this reminds him of when he poked a beehive as a kid. Back then, he escaped by jumping into a pond. This time, it's a lot worse and there's no pond waiting, especially since the things here are nothing like bees. He figures any help from the church will take time to get there, then asks what MC thinks. MC falls deep into thought. Elcid's plan would need someone with enough authority to move everyone. He had considered revealing the sacred sword if things got desperate, but even though he trusts His Excellency, he still wanted to keep it hidden from others. Leon thinks His Excellency may have understood something when they fought together, but since he asked for his opinion, he decides to go for it and says he's come up with a great plan. Sometime later at the church, the two sit at a table with tea, talking through the crisis. Stizzer thinks it over carefully. He says some parts are uncertain, but it's worth trying, especially since they have no better option. Leon asks if he really means that, and Stizzer says yes. The protagonist thanks God in his head. It's hard enough to explain things and make people believe them, so he knows he would have laughed too if he'd heard this plan cold. Since news about the devourer of cities could be secret even inside the church, they'll call it a deduction. As for breaking the barrier, if he can't mention the sacred sword, the only excuse left is saying solar aura works especially well against heretical arts. At that, Stizzer says solar aura has always been treated as a top trait in church recruitment. It's so rare that Leon is the first person he's ever seen with it, and now he thinks he finally understands why. MC says it's settled. They'll get the guild and the army moving, then lead them to the enemy base so a small elite team can strike inside. The elf says that means they need two things: the guild and army mobilized, and a team ready to infiltrate the base. He says the first part should be easy if His Excellency speaks up. Stizzer says the real issue is finding people who can stand against heretical arts, and the team should include at least A-rank members from the guild. Leon starts thinking about A-rank fighters, and then something clicks. Excited, he asks what His Excellency thinks about recruiting strong people from the slums. The man repeats, "From the slums?" The protagonist says there are actually two people there at A-rank level. He asks if the prey and the guardian of the coffin would work. Stizzer asks if they'd even agree, skill aside, and MC says they won't have much choice if the elf talks to them. Then Stizzer seems to realize something. With bright eyes, he asks if this would count as recruitment. Leon says they'll offer them a chance to do a great service for the church, and once he shows the iron chain seal, they're sure to give in. Elcid says he'd probably get stabbed if those people heard that. He remembers the brutal hit from Khan, and says he's definitely not doing this because Khan made his nose bleed. The next day at the Adventurers Guild, everyone is shaking over something. Rise nervously welcomes Lord Leon, and it looks like she was about to greet someone even more important too. Behind the protagonist, a figure in armor steps forward. The armored man fixes his eyes on the receptionist. The guild members panic, wondering if he's the Holy Knight of the Iron Chain, and why someone like that would come here. Leon says he isn't here for a rescue request this time, but for official business. Taking off his helmet, the elf introduces himself as Scissor, a bishop of the sacred church, and says he's here to request the guild's support in the name of the sacred iron chain. Then a loud voice suddenly shouts from outside the guild. Later, in a quieter room, a man introduces himself as Bernard, head of the Blaine branch, and says they'll leave this matter in his hands even though they haven't worked together before. MC notices Bernard is even bigger than Khan. He'd heard the man used to be A rank before retiring because of a leg injury. Bernard says he understands how serious this is. Serious enough for a holy knight to call for a meeting. Leon figures that's the kind of judgment you'd expect from a guildmaster. The talk moves quickly, but once they explain how little time they have, things get harder. Bernard says Blaine currently has 4 high-rank adventurers, but only one can be mobilized right now, not counting those already away on missions. They leave that adventurer to the guildmaster, while His Excellency and him head to the slums to recruit Khan, the prey. That meeting turns out more threatening than expected, probably because Khan is suspected of helping Malice. But in the end, he has no choice but to accept. Caesar tells him that if he refuses, every one of them will go on the heretic list, and then he can try running to the edge of the continent. Leon thinks the threat is what broke him. Khan realizes he walked into his own trap. He'd hoped to wipe out the cultists and make the guild suffer too. Caesar adds that the order isn't just for Khan, but also for the guardian of the coffin, and if Khan doesn't want to suffer alone, he'd better send the man a message. Confused, Khan asks if it's really just him and the guardian of the coffin. The elf says yes. Those two are enough for the key force, and everyone else just needs to evacuate citizens and keep them far from the battlefield. Khan asks if they're planning to cut off the snake's head with a small elite group, and Caesar says he's sharp for a mere gangster. Leon thinks they can't leave Khan out of this anyway. To stop the devourer of cities, everyone has to work together. That's still better than all of them dying. Looking back, the protagonist can't believe so many people gathered in only 2 days. From above, he looks over the crowd beside Caesar. Rise says an emergency request went out to every guild member ranked C or higher, and most of them chose to come. Bernard says there are around 1,500 in all, and now this really looks like total war. Leon thinks he only managed to convince Lord Blaine because of the evidence he kept. The garrison has already surrounded District 25, and the adventurers and mercenaries will handle close combat while the other forces support them from behind with ranged attacks. Elcid says that was a smart choice. If they rushed in blindly, they'd only become fuel for heretical arts, so it's better to pressure the enemy from a distance than empower them. MC looks at him, clearly pleased. Either way, they were forced into this. Even so, Lord Blaine did send one person to help them. The man introduces himself as Conrad, senior knight of Count Blaine's house, and offers his greetings to the guardian of the goddess. Scissor humbly says he doesn't deserve that title and prays the goddess protects the knight. Leon knows Conrad is famous for his military achievements. Khan mutters that he really doesn't belong here, and he points out that he is the leader of the slums after all. Then someone slips up quietly behind the protagonist and asks if he's late. Conrad asks who the man is, and the stranger snaps back, asking why Conrad is questioning him when he's the one who called him. Khan says they were both dragged into this, so they should just do the job, calling him the coffin keeper. But the man says he'll move how he wants. He's an assassin, so working neatly with a group isn't really his style. Scissor says he doesn't care how the man works, as long as the job gets done. Still, if he thinks stealth alone will let him shadow them, he'll soon learn there's nowhere to hide from the goddess's light. The assassin stares at him and dryly says, "How scary." Then he starts fading into thin air. MC can't believe it. He can't sense the man at all, not with aura sense or even his own eyes. Elcid says that leaves only one more, and MC explains it's the adventurer hired by the guild. Just then, a tall woman appears with a cheerful greeting. She says she's a little late, that the request wasn't explained very well, so she had to prepare a lot first, then introduces herself as Karen. The other three look oddly tense around her, and he wonders why she's such a huge contrast to the last one. A gangster, 2 more adventurers, a retired holy knight of the Iron Chain, a senior knight from Count Blaine's lands, and an assassin. Leon takes in the strange team. The protagonist knows a team like this was never going to work in perfect sync. They were picked for individual skill, not teamwork. Now it's time. He gives the order to start. A huge blast of fire suddenly erupts at one edge of the district. At the same time, catapults hurl flaming shots inside. Before long, the whole district is on fire. Some cultists panic, yelling that they're under attack and telling others to contact headquarters. But one of them notices something strange above. When he looks up, he sees glowing objects raining down, and a second later, the arrows hit them head-on. Terrified, one of the men screams for them to release the abomination at once. As the flames keep spreading, the district is left in ruins. Then a giant monster bursts out, smashing everything in its way. Someone shouts to fire, and the archers immediately aim at the strange beast. In the next instant, it lifts one arm and slams down, crushing the wall where the archers were standing. One of the injured men groans that their arrows did nothing. Then the mercenaries rush in, mocking them for being useless and ordering everyone to push forward and kill it. The elite group sees the fight settling into a stalemate. Elseed says they handled the opening well, but that abomination won't go down easily. He estimates the battle will last at least 10 minutes and says that if the plan works, the enemies will realize they can't win head-on and retreat into their shells. Rodrigo agrees. Right then, a tornado suddenly forms in the middle of the city, and Rodrigo repeats that this is exactly what they expected. Elseed says no matter how he looks at it, that storm isn't natural. Leon asks if it's a heretical art. Caesar cuts in, saying it's their turn now, and starts running. MC tries to follow, but the others are far faster than he expected. Soon, they reach the tornado. Leon gets there a little later, breathing hard, and Rodrigo gives an awkward grin. He apologizes. They didn't really think about him needing to keep up. Then his expression turns serious as he says he'll test how tough this heretical barrier really is. He activates a fire aura technique, and flames start wrapping around the tornado. The protagonist can't help admiring the power, just what he'd expect from Sir Conrad. A few moments later, Rodrigo confirms the barrier is extremely strong. Khan mocks the weaklings and tells them to move aside and let the knight die if that's how it goes. Then he charges the barrier, pulls back his arm, and drives a brutal punch into it. Even so, when the others look again, almost nothing has changed. That gives Conrad an opening to strike again, and he lets out an impressed laugh. Caesar says his sacred art could probably break the barrier too, but he should save his strength since they still don't know what's inside. Rolling his shoulder, Leon says he just showed a pretty embarrassing side of himself. That makes the others start paying more attention to him. Then he asks Elseed if he's gathered enough power. The sword answers that it's more than enough. It's overflowing. Thanks to all the heretics Leon cut down earlier, Elseed says even one heretic gives more power than thousands of monsters, so if MC doesn't need to hold back, he should go all out. He agrees, but warns Elseed not to get so worked up that the transformation breaks. After gathering his strength, the protagonist gets ready to strike the barrier. Karen seems to notice something, while Conrad watches with interest. Then MC attacks with a shout, and the blow destroys both the barrier and the tornado. The others stare in shock. The heretical barrier is gone, which means this is their chance. The group moves down through the opening. They head into the damp passage below. Caesar lights the dark corridor as they move. Karen asks if the coffin keeper is with them, and he suddenly appears beside him with a calm reply, making him freeze. The protagonist thinks all 6 of them made it inside safely, but what really gets him is that those 2 are wearing chainmail and still make no sound. Elseed says that means their basics are on a whole different level, and MC realizes he still has a long way to go. Karen then points out an entrance ahead that leads farther underground. Elseed finds that suspicious, and Conrad agrees it could be a trap. Even so, Rodrigo says they can't ignore it. Karen says it's probably the only path down, so they should take it, even if it all feels a little too easy. Caesar asks whether she can detect any traps from here. Leon remembers the guildmaster calling her a rogue, but Karen says it's hard to tell. The area past the stairs feels like a different space entirely, so she won't know until they enter. Caesar decides they're going in anyway. Waiting will only make things worse. Conrad agrees, so the group starts down the stairs. As they descend, Leon notices he still can't sense the coffin keeper at all and has no idea whether he's behind them. Then he steps on one stair and triggers a magic trap. The floor disappears under him and he cries out in shock. He squeezes his eyes shut, waiting to hit the ground, but it never happens. When he opens them, he's standing on solid floor somewhere else, no longer on the stairs, and has no idea where he is. Looking around, he realizes everyone is gone, and he can't sense anyone's aura. Elseed explains that it's a labyrinth formation, a classic trick. It twists and stretches space to make the base seem much bigger. The others were likely scattered through different sections, and with luck, Leon will find them soon. Just then, Karen appears and calls him Junior, saying they found each other right after being split up. Elseed notes that. Karen says she's relieved and asks if being stuck in a dark place like this would have made him nervous. The protagonist barely hears any of it. He's too busy thinking about her calling him Junior. Leon asks, calling her Senior, if she ended up alone too. She stiffens and says no. Some creepy guy is stuck to her. MC immediately thinks, creepy guy? A voice from the shadows asks who she's calling creepy. Karen snaps back that he's obviously the only creepy one there, and if he doesn't like it, he can get out of her shadow instead of wriggling around like a freak. He answers that he'll go wherever he wants. He feels lucky he reunited with a rogue, and honestly, he's not too worried about the others, so he says they should get moving, and Karen says she likes that confidence. With a smile, she asks if she can count on her Junior. Leon confidently says he won't let her down. As they move through the halls, Karen stays alert to everything around them. Soon the three reach the end of a corridor lined with doors. Karen instantly points to one and says that's the way, which puts the protagonist a little on edge. He notices she's moving faster than instinct alone should allow, and starts wondering if it's really safe to keep trusting her like this. Elcid tells him she hasn't been wrong once, so they should keep following. He says her tracking ability is even better than that of forest elves. Leon asks if she's really that good, and Elcid says maybe her aura and the darkness around them are helping her. Suddenly Karen lifts her arm and signals them to stop. She tells MC to wait. She can sense enemies ahead. After checking the area, she says there are 3, with no way around them, then asks with a smile what he wants to do. From their aura, Leon can tell they're much stronger than the enemies from District 23. Even with the sword's holy power, winning isn't certain. Still, he says they'll eliminate them. Karen teases him for being bold for a rank C, and asks if he realizes how embarrassing it'd be to ask for help after saying that. He shoots back that she should be saying the same thing. Karen grins and draws her weapons. Then she says they'll make it a contest, and he notices her green aura. A moment later, she launches herself upward and sticks to the ceiling. Leon asks if that's an aura skill too, and Elcid says yes, adding that she's incredibly skilled and must have trained hard. He warns the protagonist that if he wants to keep up with people this fast, he'll need even better footwork. The protagonist says he knows. The 3 cultists go on with what they're doing until one of them notices something overhead. Karen, casually waving at them. He instantly yells that there's an intruder. The 3 freeze in confusion for a split second, but that's enough. 2 of them are struck by Karen's thrown blades before they can react. Leon is stunned by how fast she did it. One of them drags its claws across the ground and demands to know how she dared attack. Then they reveal their true forms, non-human creatures, and one asks if she even understands what kind of place this is. Karen doesn't even blink. She says it's nothing more than an ownerless slum, then jumps at them while throwing more weapons. One creature scoffs that those little weapons are useless, but it fails to notice something snake around its leg. A rope suddenly jerks tight and slams the creature to the ground. Karen coolly says that's what happens when he only watches the daggers. In the next moment, one of the creature's heads is cut clean off as the assassin appears and strikes with his weapon. Leon tenses up, thinking both of them are terrifying, and thanks God they're on his side. He turns his thoughts to his own opponent when something suddenly flashes past his face. It slices his cheek. Elcid tells him his luck is terrible because that one is the strongest of the 3. A huge creature steps in front of him, and Leon thinks Elcid could have mentioned that after the fight. He immediately pushes both his vision and aura to the limit, but then pauses, realizing he still doesn't know what the creature threw at him. The answer comes fast. The monster reveals rows of spikes across its chest. MC shivers a little at the sight. The attack feels familiar, and he remembers the rocky slimes. Without a word, the creature fires a volley of spikes. Leon reacts at once and cuts every spike out of the air with his sword. Then he rushes straight at the monster, and it can only stare in shock, unable to believe he sliced through all its spikes. Leon lands one clean blow and splits the creature in half. He knows he never could have reacted without his vision, and without the sacred sword he couldn't have cut through that heretical attack. But Elcid corrects him. No, he can use that power because of his own hard work, even if it's still not complete. Karen lights up. Wow, you're already done. She says the protagonist was only a few seconds behind her, and for a C rank, taking down a heretic like that was amazing. She asks if maybe he's not lacking skill, just experience. Looking at the squid-like corpse on his blade, MC says she can think whatever she wants. Then something suddenly grabs his attention. He stares at the sword marks left by the 2 fighters who should have nothing in common. Somehow, they look alike. The angle of the cuts and even the depth of the wounds are nearly the same. Leon freezes in shock. Did you finally notice? Elcid asks. His guess is right. Karen slides her weapon back into her belt. With a smile, she says, "Damn, guess I can relax a little now thanks to him." She adds that the shady guy aside, she never expected the kid to keep up with her. Karen laughs and says that was a pretty nice mistake to make. Still tense, Leon asks Elcid to show him. Elcid opens Karen's terminal. It lists high-level abilities, and reveals Karen is the assassin known as Guardian of the Coffin. The protagonist is stunned. In the softest voice possible, Karen says she's right, and tells him they should keep moving, calling him Junior. Leon answers with a stiff, "Yes, Senior." He thinks that in the light, she's just the adventurer Karen, but in the dark, she's the special class assassin Guardian of the Coffin, one of the 3 evils of the slums and a labyrinth explorer. In other words, she's dangerous. MC can't believe that cheerful, pretty adventurer is really one of the slum's 3 bosses. No one would ever guess it. It doesn't seem like Rodrigo knew, and if Lionel had known, he would have said something. Still, that's not the real problem. If Leon tricks Karen now, he'll never survive the fallout. That means he may be the only one here who knows who she really is. And even if others know, there's no way she'd just let him walk off after this. For an assassin, identity is everything, important enough to kill over if needed. Leon realizes he has to stay perfectly calm. Even the smallest change on his face could give him away, while Karen brings him back to the moment, saying there's another enemy just past the next left turn. A strange creature with many glowing eyes appears. It growls and drools, and when the saliva hits the floor, it starts smoking and eating through it. Karen says it's so ugly she doesn't even want to fight it. He figures that's not just about looks. Elsid warns it'll be hard for Karen's daggers to land a real hit, and if the heretic summoned it, it probably regenerates too. Leon asks if they can go around. Karen says yes, but it'll cost them another 30 minutes. She also can't promise the other routes won't have more monsters like this, so the protagonist says they have no choice but to fight. He knows the enemy is trying to stall until they can activate the Devourer of Cities. If that happens, they win. So MC says, in that case, Guardian of the Coffin. A voice answers from the shadows. Leon asks if he can finish the monster. The assassin tells him to get ready while he and Karen hold it back. Since they're all in this together, he says he should cooperate as much as he can. Karen says nothing, just watches. After a short pause, the assassin says he understands. Leon thinks he's almost recovered the stamina he burned getting here. Now he just has to give it everything. The creature seems to sense them coming. The protagonist rushes in with his sword raised, and the monster roars as it gets ready to strike. Then it unleashes an ability at Leon. At that instant, he calls out to Elsid, and his sacred sword starts to glow, bursting with bright holy light. MC remembers this had already been proven in his fight with the armors. One of his sacred sword's main powers is canceling harmful substances. The monster shuts its eyes and roars. He leaps in and slashes. He lands the hit, but the wound is too shallow. Then several attacks rush at him. Leon dodges the creature's blows with sharp footwork, but he knows he won't avoid the next one, so he activates his vision. At minimum, he needs to block one attack. From behind, Karen calls out, "Junior, now, one more time." As he hears her, Leon hesitates. Should he trust her or not? Then he makes his choice and charges, shouting, "Let's go!" The monster lashes out again with its tentacles, but this time Karen's daggers flash in beside him. They knock aside the beast's attack while the protagonist keeps moving. He drives in with a string of slashes, and the monster howls in pain and fury. Even so, Leon realizes the cuts are still too shallow. He thinks he should have been faster, or stronger. The monster thrashes, enraged by the daggers pinned in its tails. Then something strange happens. Its movements start locking up. The creature jerks back in surprise, and Leon notices it can't move right. Something rises from its shadow. Across that whole shadow, energy-made weapons appear. The coffin keeper emerges from the dark. With one simple command, he says, "Die." Countless spikes burst from the shadow and pierce the creature through. The monster gives one last roar before crashing to the ground. It's dead. Leon is speechless, so this is what an A rank can do. Elsid points out the wounds aren't healing. That means the attack overwhelmed its regeneration. MC realizes it was a move made purely to kill one target. The assassin stays there, still controlling his power, and he can only think that was a true killing technique. Then someone walks up, saying they did great for a team thrown together on the spot. He asks Leon if he agrees, then says Karen was right. Using daggers on the tails was totally outside what he expected. Karen brushes it off and says it's nothing compared to that kill stealer. She admits she didn't expect an assassin to use a move like that. It really deserves to be called the ultimate killing technique. Then she adds that there's a reason he's one of the kings of the slums. Pointing ahead, she asks if they can keep going, because it doesn't look like there's time to rest. Leon agrees. This mission is all about beating the clock, and everything depends on whether they reach the ritual before it begins. A while later, Karen notices something ahead. She counts quickly. There are 8 heretics. Karen mutters that maybe they got there too early, and this one might be rough. Leon thinks that when it comes to reading strength, no one on their team is sharper than her. Each enemy is strong enough to make his skin crawl, and even the earlier ones would have been a nightmare in a group. He says now that they've come this far, they either wait for the others, or go look for them. Karen says both choices are bad. They might arrive too late, or miss the others entirely. Annoyed, she says she can't believe they have to gamble after coming this far, and the protagonist is still thrown off by how normal she acts. Then everything suddenly changes. An explosion erupts nearby, throwing Leon forward for a second. A crack runs through the ceiling, and he realizes the blast came from close by. Elsid says it was the shockwave from 2 huge powers colliding. Leon immediately thinks someone's fighting, and Karen seems to think so too. The heretics hear it as well, and some of them suddenly start moving. MC sees 4 head toward the sound, which gives them more options. They can either help their allies now, or deal with the smaller group first and search after. He hesitates, tense. Then he decides they should find their allies first. If the enemy wins there, they'll come back and crush their side's strength, so they need to regroup as much as possible. Karen agrees, saying the 4 left behind still won't be easy. Then she suddenly lies flat on the ground and says, "Before that." Karen presses in like she's listening through the floor. Her ability reaches far enough to catch something. Pointing, she says it's that way. Leon thinks her sixth sense is almost inhuman, totally different from his vision or footwork. A huge noise comes from the corridor ahead, and something bizarre smashes through the wall. The protagonist and Karen both flinch. At the far end, giant spikes seem to be impaling someone. Looking closer, Leon sees a barely conscious body hanging there. It's the knight. The man coughs weakly while suspended. "Sir Conrad," MC shouts, running toward him, but he quickly realizes there's an enemy there. Actually two. One heretic steps forward and says he'll handle that one. Leon looks back and sees one is on him, while Karen has to deal with two of her own. It also looks like Sir Conrad already beat the ones lying on the floor. Elsid tells him not to worry about Karen. What matters is that his opponent is strong, so he'll need to focus completely on the power. Then the heretic declares, "In the name of love and justice." He spreads his arms, and blue energy floods the area. Leon wonders if it's some kind of blue mist as the heretic tells him to feel honored. He says touching it will turn the protagonist to dust, and using Wandering Fury on someone like him is a generous death. Elsid explains that this one is a summoner, making MC ask, "A summoner?" Elsid says heretics fall into types. Some are mutants who use heretic arts inside their own bodies. Others summon living beings or forces from another dimension. Those are summoners, and none of them are sane. Leon draws his sword. "A generous death? That's my line." Then he attacks the heretic, who mocks him, saying a normal sword can't touch something astral. In the next instant, his strike actually cuts through the blue aura around the heretic, leaving him stunned. Leon says there are always exceptions. His sacred sword can touch astral beings. The shaken heretic calls it impossible, saying no aura-covered 90mm weapon should be able to break his heretic art. Furious, he tries again and summons a giant creature from another plane. The protagonist doesn't wait around and goes straight for the monster too, pushing the scared summoner into a corner. Then one clean slash lands right on the heretic. The creature grabs Leon's sword and mocks him, asking if he really thought that would work. But then panic hits when it sees its wounds aren't healing, and it wonders if MC's attack cancels heretic hearts. The man stammers that this can't mean he is but he cuts him off before he can finish. Terrified, the creature finally meets its end. Leon pulls back from the body. He turns to Karen and asks what happened on her side. She looks at him and just says, "What a mess." The protagonist figures she had to handle two enemies, so his was probably the easier one. He says Sir Conrad matters most right now, and Karen points out where he is. They reach him, and he apologizes for showing them such an ugly side of himself. He says he can't go with them like this and tells them to leave him behind and keep moving. Conrad adds that he'll be delayed, but once he recovers, he'll return. Karen cuts in and asks how much time he has. He stays quiet for a moment, then admits she already knows. Karen says if someone at his level can't stop the bleeding with aura, the answer is obvious. That revelation leaves Leon shocked. Pressing a hand to the wound, Conrad says he can maybe hold on for an hour. MC tenses up. An hour might be enough. If they can clear the city's malice before then, Conrad can still be saved. He thinks he wouldn't even consider this if he had no way to help, but now he has the holy sword. Then he calls for Elsid and says he needs to repeat after him so Leon can use a sacred healing art and shrink the wound with stored power. Karen watches in surprise. He starts the prayer. "O Almighty Goddess, bring comfort to those who serve justice. Don't let them shake in the cold northern wind, in the valley of death." Sacred energy pours from his hand. Conrad stares in shock at what Leon is doing. Karen is stunned too, thinking this sacred art is at least on a bishop's level. A moment later, the hole in Conrad's stomach closes. He says he'd heard the protagonist was the one behind this subjugation, and now he sees why the bishop trusts him. He even asks if the protagonist is a cardinal candidate. Elsid jokes that MC just jumped from paladin to cardinal candidate. Conrad says getting saved like that made him lose his composure, and while he's not ready for battle yet, he'll recover soon. Leon starts to answer, but Conrad cuts him off, saying he clearly didn't want his identity revealed. He swears to stay silent until ordered otherwise. Elsid awkwardly notes that the misunderstandings keep growing, and the protagonist thanks him with an embarrassed smile. Karen says she'll give Conrad a potion before they continue. After saying goodbye, Leon reminds her they need to hurry, and the two move through the halls carefully. Then Karen suddenly glances back and pins MC against the wall, making him flustered. She asks if what Conrad said was true, because someone his age being a cardinal candidate would be unheard of. With solar aura and sacred arts on a bishop's level, she says it would make sense. She adds that his skill with aura and a weapon is amazing too, and asks where he learned it. Leon tells her he's not a cardinal candidate. Karen wonders if he's an apprentice of the Iron Chain Holy Knights, and begs him to tell her because she's too curious to hold back. He thinks he might have fallen for that if he didn't already know who she was, so he says maybe he'll tell her once they get closer. Then he points out how guarded she is and asks if everyone from the church is like that. Twisting her hair, Karen says most men tell her whatever she wants to know. Leon doesn't bite. He tells her to quit joking and focus on what they should do next, whether the two of them should keep going alone or search for the others. Karen says he doesn't need to worry about that. A little confused, the protagonist asks why. With a wink, she tells him he'll understand when they get there. Then they keep moving together. They reach another corridor just in time to see a body hit the floor. Lionel stands there with his weapon and says Brother Leon is here, while Rodrigo calls out in excitement. MC almost feels bad for the heretics, and Caesar says he's glad both of them are safe. Then the coffin guardian suddenly comes out of the wall and asks if Caesar isn't happy to see him. Caesar says he didn't even know he was there, and the assassin calmly says he understands. As they regroup, Leon explains that Sir Conrad won't be joining them because of his injuries, though he should recover. Still, they can't wait. After thinking it over, Caesar says it can't be helped. They'll move ahead with just the 5 of them. Rodrigo asks if Karen, as an adventurer, has any useful tools, then rudely tells her to hurry unless she wants him to save her. Karen fires back, asking why Rodrigo doesn't use whatever he's hiding instead of acting like a parasite living off others. Rodrigo gets furious and demands she say that again. Then Caesar cuts in, saying he'll lead since he has resistance to heretical arts. Rodrigo and Karen will stay in the middle, and Leon should take the rear as their trump card. Rodrigo laughs at the idea that this brat adventurer is their trump card. Still, he accepts it and starts to say something about the coffin guardian. He says he'll do his part as long as they leave him alone. He was pretty useful last time they worked together. Blushing a little, Karen agrees that he did his part, while Leon can tell she's trying way too hard. Rodrigo says it's probably best to ignore someone who won't listen, and Lionel asks if they're moving out. The group heads deeper through the corridors. Up front, Rodrigo comments on the evil energy ahead. Suddenly, a dark ring opens on the path. Lionel says it looks like a space made by heretic arts, and Caesar begins chanting sacred magic. Without hesitating, he steps toward it and says they're going in. The others rush after him. Inside, Leon feels swallowed by a nasty darkness. He can't see past aura or hear anything. It's like sinking into sticky swamp mud. Feeling his way ahead, his hand finally breaks through. Then he comes all the way out, relieved they escaped that black space. Lionel, tense, shouts for everyone. Looking around, the group realizes they're surrounded. Red eyes stare from every side, and Leon wonders if the enemy expected them. One heretic says he was getting bored waiting and didn't think they'd take this long. With a grin, he thanks them and stretches out his hand. Lionel stiffens, not fully sure what he's seeing. The man keeps smiling, and Caesar suddenly blurts out that he's an evangelist. The man lightly says they figured it out. Leon asks if Malice has ranks too, and Elcid says yes, there's a hierarchy. Devotees only use heretic arts passed down to them. Congregants study those arts on their own and get corrupted by them, and the ones who spread heretic arts are executives called evangelists. In church terms, they rank high, at least equal to a bishop. The evangelist goes on, saying today is magnificent because the ritual succeeded and all those sacrificed lives finally paid off. Caesar keeps staring at him, and the evangelist says that above all else, he now gets to show a servant of that foolish, narrow-minded goddess the truth of the one real God. The group thinks he's completely insane. Rodrigo asks how the ritual could be successful if nothing has happened yet. The cultists call them a hopeless race, and their leader says the plan has already begun. Now all that's left is to complete it, and then they'll understand everything they did was useless. Leon asks if that means the ritual really succeeded and if everything is already over, but Elcid says not yet. He explains that the city-devouring ritual works like fishing. Life force is the bait used to draw in an extra-dimensional monster. The protagonist repeats, "Fishing?" Elcid says there's still time before that thing finds the bait and bites. MC realizes that means no one knows when the monster will show up or take the bait, and Elcid confirms it. So they might have over an hour left, or only seconds. Either way, it's a race against time. Leon calls on his excellency, and he starts a sacred spell, asking the goddess to fill this place with warm light so they won't lose their way in the dark. A glowing sphere rises into the air, and then holy light floods the whole area. One of the creatures is horrified by what it sees. They shield their eyes however they can and scream. Elcid says this technique mixes sacred arts with aura. It's not as strong as the sun, but it can still limit summoning and heretic arts. He adds that his own light would work better, but this is enough to block summoner-type heretic arts. Karen powers up her aura and throws daggers at the enemies, but the evangelist yanks one of his followers in front of him to use as a shield. At the same time, Lionel attacks with his iron flail, while Rodrigo handles the other heretics. Leon joins the fight too, but notices the evangelist still isn't engaging. That means he's probably guarding the ritual's core, and they need to destroy the altar while the enemy still can't use proper heretic arts. Still smiling, the evangelist calls them fools and asks if they really think that little trick can stop his spells. All at once, several profane circles appear around him. Creatures begin coming through the portals, and a swarm of monsters appears in front of him. Leon is alarmed by how grotesque they are, and Elsid explains that direct heretic invocation is blocked, so the evangelist made chimeras with incomplete heretic arts instead. They'll blow themselves apart soon, but still. The protagonist realizes that's more than enough to buy time, and he wonders if the ritual could activate instantly. Rodrigo charges the enemy, cursing them as worthless small fry. Khan slams a brutal punch into one of the monsters, driving his fist straight through it, but right after that, he feels something is off. When he looks down, his arm is already infected. At the same time, another monster shrieks as Karen's daggers hit it. She quickly realizes her poison did nothing, and worse, these things don't even feel pain. Elsid warns that if this keeps up, it'll turn into a battle of endurance, and the longer it lasts, the worse things get. Leon knows he's right. He tells himself they need to end this fast, but he still can't unleash the Holy Sword's full power. Elsid adds that if the enemy figures out who the hero really is, it'll become a huge problem. They'll throw away their lives just to pin him down, so the only way to change this is to catch them by surprise. MC says he understands. He has one last move left. As the ritual keeps building the gate, the evangelist only smiles wider. Then the whole group feels a new kind of energy. They instantly know something has changed. A massive evil presence starts coming through the portal. The evangelist trembles with joy, saying they've finally come, and that the apostle of God answered their call. The power pouring from the portal grows even stronger. Leon grabs his chest as his heart pounds wildly. The altar is gone now, replaced by a giant hole. A fear he's never felt before hits him, and he realizes this must be the city devourer. He calls to Elsid, but he's told it's still too early to draw on the Holy Sword's full strength. For now, they just need something to stall it, so they'll use a sacred art at half power. Leon asks if sacred arts alone can do it, and Elsid admits it won't be easy. Still, thanks to something Caesar created, he has an idea. He explains that to fully recreate the goddess's symbol, they need both the sun and the moon, and by pure luck, they have people with solar and lunar aura. Add a bishop skilled in mixed sacred arts and a hero, and it's terrible news for Malice. With a snap, he opens a golden terminal. The protagonist is told to read what's written on it, and he starts. May the sun and moon, the two pupils of the goddess who watches all things, may we always give thanks. Her open eyes are divine love, and her 6 closed eyes are kindness. Caesar is stunned. It's the first verse of the goddess's scripture. Then Colin notices another sphere forming overhead. Beside the moon already there, a sun appears too. Karen lights up, saying it feels warm. Leon keeps reading. On the day the sun and moon rise together, all who look to the sky shall kneel and pray with honest hearts. At once, sacred power spreads through the area and crashes into every monster around them. Elsid proudly explains that this sanctuary is the perfect answer to heretical arts. Space itself rejects outside creatures and powers. Caesar gives the order. Now everyone. The whole group rushes in and starts ripping through the monsters. The evangelist finally loses his smile, calling it blasphemy and sneering that they're just cattle of the goddess. With a snap of his fingers, he vows to slaughter them all. Then the creatures around them start changing. Something bursts out from inside their bodies and flows into the evangelist's hands. Tearing up, he says it pains him to sacrifice such precious followers just to deal with this cattle. Then he crushes the creature's heart in his hand. He tells them to watch closely. This, he says, is God's true grace. A moment later, his body begins to transform under that dark energy. Muscles swell, and horns grow from his body. Leon and the elf tense up at once. Once the change is done, the evangelist mocks them as insects and says he'll show them the power his God gave a mere human. Elsid warns that a sanctuary cast at MC's level won't last long. If the evangelist is already this strong inside it, MC will have no chance once the effect is gone. Right then, Khan and Caesar sprint past him and charge the monster. The elf swings his weapon hard, and Khan follows with a barrage of heavy punches, but none of it does anything. The monster mocks them, asking if that's really all they've got. Grinning again, he says now it's his turn. Then those twisted limbs lash out. Khan gets hit first and takes serious damage from the blow. Caesar struggles to block as best he can. Leon sees the truth. The gap in power is massive. The enemy's strength, defense, and healing are way beyond theirs. He wonders if only the Holy Sword at full power can hurt him, but if that one strike fails, they'll lose their only chance. Drunk on his new power, the evangelist says he's overflowing with strength and that they really are nothing but insects. The protagonist looks behind him and sees Caesar beaten down, collapsed in the rubble. Khan is nearby too, badly hurt and unable to fight, and Leon can only think, damn, they need one perfect hit to win, but he doesn't know if that's even possible. Karen forces herself back up, wincing from her injuries. MC goes to her and asks if she's okay. She says probably. Still, that doesn't change the problem. Even attacks from the Coffin Guardian and hers did nothing. Then something clicks for Leon. He remembers the terminal listing Karen's abilities and starts thinking about the Coffin Guardian, especially Shadow Step. He urgently asks Ms. Guardian for help, saying he needs her power. Surprised, she asks if he actually thought of something. He says they'll go behind the evangelist and destroy the altar to stop the ritual. Beating him isn't the main goal. Karen refuses right away, asking how exactly he plans to get behind the enemy. Does he think he's some mage who can teleport? Leon says they don't need teleportation. They can jump through space itself. She asks how he expects to pull that off, and the protagonist looks visibly tense. Flustered, he almost calls her senior again, then switches to Coffin Guardian. He promises to keep her secret if she'll help him just this once. Karen looks like she's about to melt from the pressure. Leon goes on, saying he doesn't know her situation, but if they fail, everyone here dies, her included. She suddenly jumps back from him. Her face turns completely serious. Even MC gets a little nervous from that reaction. But in the end, Karen admits he's right and says she'll help. Damn it. Blushing, she asks how long he's known and complains that he should have told her sooner. Covering her face, she groans that she's going to die from embarrassment. Leon jokes that if he had told her earlier, she would have killed him, and that finally makes her laugh. The next second, a dagger is at his throat. She reminds him that a woman's secret is precious. Elsid lies nearby, completely beat up. Khan walks over and asks, "Hey Bishop, how long are you gonna stay down?" Then he calls him a weakling. That immediately gets under the elf's skin, and he snaps that he'll kill that bastard. Meanwhile, Leon and Karen move toward the monster. She tells him this is as far as she can take him. He has to go alone from here. If she stays hidden any longer, the evangelist will notice her for sure. The protagonist just tells her not to die. That catches Karen a little off guard. With a scoff, she activates Coffin Guardian and says she never thought she'd see someone from the church worry about her. Elsid explains that Shadow Step is a space-jumping technique so hard that even mages struggle with it. So if Karen can pull it off, she'll land exactly where they need. Leon thinks that's more than enough to get behind the enemy. A moment later, MC slips out of the shadows behind the creature. As he nears the giant hole, he thinks this has to be the City Devourer's core. On edge, he wonders if this is really the life essence they talked about. Elsid confirms it. It came from sacrificing over 10,000 lives. Leon draws the holy sword and says in anger that this is unforgivable. Caesar suddenly shouts for Brother Hay, and he instantly knows something is wrong. Before he can react, one of the monster's twisted limbs drives through him. He coughs up blood. The wound is bad. Elsid desperately cries out, "Leon!" The monster tells him to give up, mocking him as the goddess's dog. It lifts him into the air and says his last chance is gone. He should accept death as the blessing of its god. Caesar calls for Brother the protagonist again, and Khan charges in, yelling that he's an idiot. But the monster swats both of them away with ease. The evangelist says there's no point getting upset. They'll all end up just like MC. Laughing, he asks if MC is already dead. MC thinks, "Death? Am I really going to die here without stopping malice? Without doing anything heroic?" He can see Elsid saying something, but the words won't reach him. His mind drifts to their promise to go to the Titan mountain range together, but he may not be able to keep it. As his life starts fading, one thought remains: promise. Then he remembers someone saying they'd trust his promise because he's the kind of person who keeps his word no matter what. With one sharp move of his blade, cuts himself free. Even the creature is shocked by that. He drops and rolls away, badly hurt. Struggling hard, he starts to stand. He knows the odds are hopeless, but a hero's path is to keep looking at victory. That's what his master always taught him, to keep moving forward until the very end. Elsid watches in tense silence as Leon declares he'll kill the monster and save everyone like a true hero. The creature laughs and calls him cursed, but admits his stubbornness is impressive. He's almost dead and still holding his sword. Then it says he should survive this too, and launches another attack. Suddenly, the old hero Rodrigo appears, saying it looks like he has no choice. At the protagonist's side, he says the protagonist has done enough, and now he'll lend a hand. He tells his foolish disciple to watch closely, and MC looks up at him with relief. Sacred power surges from his body. He calls out, "7-star sword." The stars appear, "Great chariot Merrick," and in a flash, Leon drives his sword through the monster. The creature stares behind itself in confusion, wondering when the protagonist got there. A second later, its head is cut clean off. As the severed head rolls away, it still demands to know how MC dared wound him again. The monster sneers, asking if he really thought it was over just because he cut off its head, but then it suddenly goes quiet. It realizes the head isn't growing back. Leon smiles and asks if it's still alive without it, then mocks the filthy thing, saying maybe this pitiful state is what it wanted all along. He tells it to go serve Dullahan instead, since headless creatures seem to do just fine. That only makes the creature furious. It snarls that the protagonist's mockery and disrespect can't be paid back with blood alone. Rodrigo warns that MC is already weakened by his wounds, and his body may not survive a second strike. Even so, he asks if MC will do it. He nods. Rodrigo agrees, but says the price will be heavy. The stars rise again. The Great Chariot, and this time Dovey too. The protagonist throws himself at the monster once more, and the creature screams, asking what is happening. Why isn't it healing? Why is its forbidden art breaking apart? Realizing the end has come, the evangelist declares he'll drag them all down with him. He creates a huge vortex of evil power and roars for everyone to die together. Leon just smiles, saying he expected this, so he held back a little. Now he's going to blow it to pieces for real. For the first time, the creature truly looks scared. Rodrigo tells MC not to waste a second. The real power of the 7-star sword is in its links. He explains Leon is still too inexperienced to fully control even 1 star, but he can manage one special finishing move. The stars appear again, and he unleashes the sacred cross. The strike tears straight through the monster, and the protagonist passes beyond it, leaving the body in fragments. At last, its essence of life shatters. Desperately trying not to be pulled into the abyss, the creature realizes its self-destruction failed because that essence was destroyed, and it cries out in shock. It can't resist the pull and screams as it's dragged in, refusing to accept this ending. Then a city devourer appears behind it, opens its huge mouth, and swallows the creature like it was nothing. The devourer slams into the stone floor, but the portal shuts right after, and it disappears. Elcid says that was way too close. Leon asks if it's finally over, and Rodrigo says the devourer seems satisfied with that small snack once the essence was gone. MC is stunned. A few more seconds, and all of them would have been offered to the city devourer too. As everyone starts to recover, Elcid is just about to praise him when he suddenly collapses. He drops to his knees, lets go of his sword, and cries out in pain. Lionel rushes over, calling for brother the protagonist. The protagonist tries to speak to his highness, but the elf cuts him off and says he'll treat him right away. He uses sacred magic to heal MC's wounds. Even though he's badly hurt himself, Lionel smiles and says they barely made it. He's just glad he wasn't too late, but he tells him to heal himself first. Karen, still cheerful, asks her junior if they won. She says something flashed when she got there, then vanished, and wonders if that was the ritual. She demands a full explanation. Leon tells her they stopped the city devourer from activating, and the evangelist got swallowed by the monster, so he should be completely dead. Then the protagonist turns to Lionel and says he's about to black out, so he's leaving himself in Lionel's hands. A second later, he passes out, and Karen shouts for her junior. Elcid watches from above, looking pleased. Seeing MC out cold, he quietly thinks, "Good job, MC." That's where this video ends. If you don't want to miss the next part, turn on the notification bell, and I'll see you next time.